Well, good morning. My name is Greg Sizemore, and I want to welcome you to this very unique yet very information-packed session for the CURT Spring May 2020 meetings. We'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us, and those who will be joining us in a few minutes will certainly add those in. Let me tell you a little bit about what the agenda is for today. We want to make this as comfortable as possible and as meaningful as possible. If you are able to activate your video, we're going to invite you to do so. That'll give those who are presenting and all of us who are here a sense of gathering, a sense of place, and a sense of community, a sense of roundtable, if you will. So if it's possible to activate your video and appropriate to do so, I invite you to please activate your video so we can see and be seen. Rana and Rob from our office are going to be monitoring the chat box. So if you'll scroll over your screen at the very bottom center, you'll see something called chat. If you have questions throughout our time today, we invite you to write your question in that chat box. Rob and Rana from our office, working remotely nevertheless, are going to be monitoring that chat box. And when we get to the point in the program where we're going to have some interactive dialogue, why they're going to help us capture your question. We also want to invite you to stay to the very end if possible. The meeting is scheduled to go to about 4:30, but we're going to have a drawing randomly. And for the winner who has stayed with us, we got a really, really nice prize package we're going to be sending you. So encourage you to stay to the very end if you can. I will also remind you that what you're about to see with all the PowerPoints, the report outs, the special guests and their PowerPoints, they're all available in your app. So you should have received some instructions on how to download the CURT app, and you can certainly follow along. You can also send these things out, these PowerPoints and everything that's shared here into to whomever you want in your organization. But your PowerPoints are in your app. Questions in the chat box. For those of you who are just joining us, we welcome you. We ask you to activate your video camera. We want to see and be seen. That adds to a sense of community and a sense of gathering that we would normally have during our regular scheduled meetings. My screen has gone blank, Greg. I don't know if that is my machine or not, but I have. There we go. Now we're back to it. Great. Also, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We do have some generous sponsors who have made today possible, and I'd like to thank the NCCER organization, whose sponsorship is always very generous, and we appreciate you as well. Also, SmartVid.io, and their logo and their email was on, or their website was on the scrolling part of our announcements just before the meeting. So we want to thank SmartVid.io as well as TouchPlan, new organizations that are making these meetings possible. So they'll be prominently placed on other places in our communications, but we do want to thank our three sponsors, NCCER, SmartVid.io, and TouchPlan. We appreciate it. We will have from time to time throughout the day, throughout this afternoon, opportunities to go into breakout sessions. The way the breakout sessions work is that the technology will automatically throw you into breakout rooms. Hopefully we'll have CURT staff who host, but we want you to get to know folks. It's not so unlike what we normally would have done if we were to have an icebreaker or a mixer at our regular CURT meetings. So from time to time, we'll go to breakout sessions. They're rather short, and you'll be you don't have to touch a button. You don't have to do anything. You'll just be put in those breakout sessions, and at the right time, you'll be brought back into this plenary session. So we're excited to have you get to know and connect with other folks as well. I want to also remind you of the CURT meetings, which at this point are scheduled to be face-to-face meetings from here on out. The summer meetings are scheduled to be in August in Philadelphia. The November meetings in Cape Coral, Florida in November, and the National Conference in Phoenix in February of 2021. We also will have a series of webinars. Some of you, many of you in fact, have tuned into our construction and crisis webinars. I think we've had 11 of them. Those are all recorded, and to Curt members, they're available to you for your use internally. You can send those out to your organization as you deem prudent. For more information on that, you can touch base with Rob, who's here on the call, or Rana. Send an email to any of those folks, and we'll make sure you get the webinar of your choice. So I've announced the upcoming meetings, again, August the 24th. Hopefully that'll be a face-to-face meeting. We're looking forward to it. We're planning for that accordingly. We'll also have at that time the International Construction Summit in August and the Workforce Development and Offsite Construction Summit. Regarding the summits, tomorrow there are 2 concurrent summits that you should have received information on. There's also still room in those. They've been very well subscribed. If you would like to join us, we still have seats available in both summits. Again, Rob Fisher and Rana Dubrow from our office will get you registered. For more information, you can see the website, curt.org. You can email any of the staff, and we'll get you signed up for those summits tomorrow. More on that toward the end of the morning. So for those of you who are just joining us, I encourage you to share your video if it's appropriate to do so. Enable your video camera, which gives us a feeling of place and community and gathering. And that's what we want to achieve during our time together this afternoon. I think I've gotten all the announcements out of the way that I wanted to mention. Again, we're going to have a drawing at the end of the day when this ends about 4:30, and have a very nice little swag box coming to you with some really cool prizes for the winner. Make sure you keep your microphone muted. We're going to try to control that from here, from the office, but if you'll make sure your microphone's muted, that will prevent any kind of interruption for the various presentations that we'll have ongoing. Activate your camera, mute your microphones, and at the right time when we go into breakout session, you can certainly unmute your microphones and get to know each other. I want to spend just a few minutes. One final announcement I want to make. At the very end of this session, which is approximately 4:30 this afternoon, we have arranged for a virtual happy hour. And what we want you to do, we invite you to get an adult beverage. It's okay. We're going to go into a session for about an hour. And then a few minutes into that happy hour reception time from 4:30 to 5:30, we're going to break out 3 times into 10-minute groups. So you'll get to know people, get to connect with people. Generally speaking, the Curt staff will be in one of those. Again, it's going to be all automated. We're not picking and choosing who goes where. The technology will put you into the breakout session automatically, and we're hopeful that at least one Curt staff person will be in those. But if not, do what you would normally do at our receptions. Get to know everyone and share some of what's going on with your life, your organization's life, and let's continue to drive the connectivity. I appreciate all of those who are activating their camera. If you're joining us late, please activate your camera, but mute your microphone. Let me share with you for a few minutes what happened yesterday. So this meeting this afternoon is the second in a series of three-day meetings. The first meeting, the first day, was comprised of our leadership team and our executive board. And as they met, they primarily met around what you would expect them to meet on, and that's the impact of COVID-19 on our industry, on our individual organizations, on this particular association, and on you. And we spent the greater part of the day trying to establish a nucleus or poles around which the issues seem to generate. And right now, they seem to generate around 4 or 5 various topics. I want to share those with you at this time. First of all is workforce and safety. There is a keen sense that safety just got a little bit more complicated. The regulatory compliance got a little bit more challenging, and the uncertainty rose a little bit more. Curt has always said we have 3 things to share with our members, and that is each other's perspectives, each other's resources, and each other's experiences. So what we're going to try to do in the coming weeks is rally around these issues and bring you some resources that we think can help you be a better, more well-informed, more well-networked decision maker. So workforce issue, there is a general consensus it didn't go away. And as we get back into rapid ramp up, assuming that's going to be possible, we've now displaced and disrupted our workforce. What's that going to mean on our job sites? What's the added anxiety of the COVID-19 presence in our country going to mean on our job sites? And what's that going to mean for safety? What is the new reasonable person test, if you will, regarding safety? So that's one pillar. The second one is there is a keen sense that both technology and innovation will now be fast forwarded, will be put on and has been put on now, a rocket booster, if you will. And what kind of emerging technologies are we going to see to help us manage the job site and our capital portfolio more effectively remotely? Don't know the answers to those questions, but there's a sense that we need to monitor those developments. The third area is a blueprint series, another owner's blueprint, if you will, which enumerates the best approach or the leading approach to crisis management. What do crisis management teams need to be comprised of? How do they roll? What are the roles and responsibilities? What kind of actions need to be taken? We're gathering checklists from various owner organizations, and I'm confident that there will be an owner's blueprint on effective crisis management. We want to get that out as quickly as possible. The fourth area was the whole concept of supply chain disruption, especially coming from China. There is a keen sense to try to bring a lot of manufacturing capabilities back to the United States. However, there still exists a very significant delta, cost delta that companies find very compelling. How do we overcome that? What do we need to do there? And I want to be very clear on this point. CURT does no lobbying. We've never done lobbying. We're not going to do it moving forward. But we may be involved in a coalition which seeks to provide the owner's input to the policymakers on what needs to happen here vis-a-vis infrastructure and tax breaks and those sorts of things to compel manufacturing to come back to the United States. More on that. That's very fresh in its development, but it did consume a significant part of the time yesterday. So we've got workforce and safety, technology and innovation, blueprint series development, supply chain management, and possibly participation in a coalition that begins to provide information, insight, perspective to policymakers as they try to make manufacturing more attractive for the states and bring back more U.S.-centric suppliers. That's just a synopsis of where we are, or what we did yesterday with both the leadership team and our executive team. I want to begin at this point to talk to you about not only the results of yesterday's leadership team, but also talk to you a little bit more about what's going to happen at this point. What we're going to do, oh, by the way, the other announcement that I think you need to be aware of too is that the national conference that I mentioned shortly ago, sorry, Greg, I just got this. I beg your pardon. I was supposed to mention it in the announcements. The theme is agility, opportunity, and sustainability, thriving in the new normal. That's the theme for the 20th annual conference at the Wild Horse Pass next February the 8th through the 10th. We're also working up 3 scenarios: a totally live option, a mixed live virtual option, or a totally virtual option for a national conference. So hats off to Greg Palmer and team for working on those scenarios. Again, agility, opportunity, and sustainability, thriving in the new normal theme for the 2021 national conference. I now want to share with you just a word or two before we go into the first set of networking breakouts. I want to share with you a word or two about the International Committee. Following the breakouts, we're going to come back and we're going to tell you a little bit about what the Safety, Workforce, and Lean Committee has been up to. Then we're going to do some Q&A there and networking breakouts, and then we're going to move into the second set, which would include technology, offsite construction, and procurement. Then we're going to go into breakouts there. Next slide, please. Greg, is there a next slide on international? And if so, advance it. If not, I've got my set here. So the 2020 focus areas for international include a workshop on August the 24th in Philadelphia. This is a departure from what we normally see in our international workshops. They're typically offshore. We've had them all around the world, China multiple times, Europe multiple times, the Mideast a time or two, India a time or two, but this time we're going to have the event in Philadelphia. And the theme is going to be approaches to managing international projects. The focus is going to be building overseas, including the latest trends, but we're also going to have that meeting here in Philly instead of abroad. The other thing that committee is going to do is plan for a CURT European Summit. It will likely be in Germany, and it will likely be this fall or early next year. We also will be talking about the CISE and Project Excellence Award and how the international submittals can support those Construction Industry Safety Excellence Awards, as well as the Project Excellence Award. The August workshop is going to be talking about construction trends for the year, safety and how safety management has changed for international projects, and how to utilize CURT to support ventures in new regions that that we're seeing our owner community begin to populate. So the date for that international summit is August the 24th. It is designed to be a live, on-site, face-to-face event currently. The international committee staff persons and co-chairs are, as you see on your screen, Chris Dummermuth from Merck, Gary Tomczak from International Paper, and of course the supporting staff liaison, Joe Gianfrido, who has had extensive experience in his career with P&G on international projects. There's a video I want to share, and then we're going to see if there were any particular questions regarding the International Committee report. Greg? Okay. More information on that will be forthcoming in emails in our weekly reader, in the Voice magazine, on the website, etc. Another point I might add, that part of our construction and crisis CURT response is a special report. Rob and Ron have been putting this together almost weekly. In order to avoid email fatigue, as Kyle likes to call it, we're asking you to make a request to receive the special report that CURT's has developed for you moving forward. I'm now going to ask Rob and Rana if there are any questions regarding the International Committee as you've been monitoring the chat box that you'd like to share with the crowd here. Rob or Rana, you can activate your microphone and share.
So we have not gotten any in the text box, but I welcome anyone, if they have questions, to just go to the chat function and put your questions in there. You can either send them to Rana and I privately, or you can open them to everyone. So we'll be monitoring that for any questions. Feel free to put any questions you might have in there.
Thank you, Rob. And for those of you who joined us late, we're asking you to activate the video. You can see everybody. It's a sense of community, a sense of gathering, and a sense of place that we would normally have here in Cincinnati during these spring meetings, but forced obviously to do virtually. So if you joined us late, please make sure your microphone is muted, but that your video camera is activated so you can join us in a true roundtable and a true sense of gathering. Hearing no additional questions from Rana and Rob on the International Committee, I'm going to open it up, and this is a risk because I know we've got about 70 people on here. Are there any particular questions that you'd like to ask from the general forum? This is the same that we would do if we were gathered in a plenary session at a regular CURT meeting. So if you have a question related to what we've talked about to date, again, we're going to get to the other committee shortly, I'll invite you to activate your microphone. You'll be highlighted in the little yellow or yellow greenish box, and you can ask away. Are there any questions? Okay. So good. We're about 10 minutes ahead of time, and that's great. What we're going to do now is that the technology is going to sort you into a number of breakout rooms. It's automatic. You don't have to touch anything. When you get to the breakout room, we invite you to get to know one another and particularly talk about the impact that perhaps this pandemic has had on you, your organization, your company, and maybe some ideas. It's rather open-ended. The idea of the breakout sessions is to get you connected with one another. They will be approximately 10 minutes in length. At the end of the breakout session, you'll be automatically put back into this plenary session right here, and we'll continue with our first set of committee report outs, and then our Ask Kurt portion, which follows these committee reviews. So Greg, again, we're about 9 minutes ahead of schedule. That's a good thing. If you can send these fine people into their breakout sessions, we'll get to know each other in a much smaller group. Greg, go right ahead. And all you have to do is press join when you see the join button, and you'll be Okay, we're going to give just a moment or two for the others to join us back here in the plenary session. And they will be back here in just a second. We have a little Delta time. Kyle, if you're on the call and you can, hi Jim, how are you? Kyle, if you can ask Sherry to step in here for a moment, I'd appreciate it. All right. The others are, it's like kids in the pool. I've always said, first you can't get them in, then you can't get them out. It's like kids in a bathtub.
Places.
Yeah, yep. Here we go. Now they're coming back to us. All right. All right.
Here we are.
We're going to give just a moment or two to make sure everybody's back. And it looks like you're all are coming in very, very rapidly as you hit that button. And what we want to do next here, great. What we're going to do next, again, these breakout sessions are going to go on throughout the day, and they won't be with the same crowd. There'll be different crowds. And so you'll meet an entirely different crew here, I'm pretty sure. Again, the technology does the auto separation, and we'll do a little post-conference critique as we go through here to make sure that you have, if there's some suggestions for improvement, we certainly capture those. Let me move now to the first set of what we call Ask Kurt. What we've done, and we began this in November, is to put together a series of brief report outs on the committees, and then ask each of the committee chairs to be available for an Ask Kurt session. This really does promote a lot of interaction. This is, after all, a round table, and we want to make sure that we keep to the spirit of that round table. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Safety and Wellness Committee report out. Their 2020 focus areas include, number one, their workshops, which are now virtual, human and organizational performance, shifting perspectives on safety management. Registration is still open for that. If you'd like to register, you can call Rana Dubrow. They're at the number on your screen, or email her. The agenda is going to address suicide prevention. How do we deal with marijuana in the workplace, and artificial intelligence's role, intelligence apostrophe S apostrophe, I don't know, role in improving safety performance. So there's still room for that. You can also go to our website at curt.org/events and get more information. The second major initiative for the Safety Committee will be the Kurt Construction Industry Safety Excellence Awards. As you know, these are well subscribed to. They're rather exclusive. You can apply online. They're for owners and contractors and associations. The due date is July the 10th. The winners are notified in September, and the presentations are at our November meeting. We also highlight them on our Own Voice magazine. Engineering News Record is often there to highlight them as well. If you feel that you've got a project worthy of recognition, the recognition is vast, it is national in scope, and it is quite an honor to get selected for you and your company. The awards are magnificent, and we always have a lot of fun in November with that. And the final area with the Safety Committee is the Safety Survey. We're going to collect 2019 performance data on a number of different issues. It is a joint CII Kurt benchmarking portal that we're going to populate, and the data is used to measure, improve, and push for a zero injury workplace. We have made outstanding progress in recent years, but there's still more work to be done. So when you get an email that asks you about the safety performance of your organization, please participate, and it will help make that safety performance portal much more meaningful. The deadline for that is June 15th. I'm going to ask if Daniel or Rob or Rana have any additional inputs, or perhaps our Safety Committee. Are there any additional inputs on that particular safety survey piece?
Yeah, let me jump in on that real quick. The safety benchmarking portal is open. It's been open now for a couple of weeks. Everyone has probably received maybe one or two messages on that. Strongly encourage you to do that, as Greg just mentioned. If you go to the CURT.org site under resources, safety benchmarking portal, super easy to get there. You do not even have to log in to do any of this. So download the template, submit it to me. I'll do all the work for you. The effort is minimal. It's the same data that you put into your OSHA report earlier this year. So for the most part, it's at your fingertips. We are currently up to, if I remember yesterday when I looked, maybe around 700 million hours collected so far. And our goal is at least 3.5 billion, so that we can be at least at or slightly ahead of what we collected last year. So we have a little ways to go, and there's still plenty of time to do it. There's still another 6 weeks. But ideally, don't wait to the end. We really want to get up to 3.5 to 4 billion hours, because the more data we have in there, the better the analytics, the more fidelity in helping to improve our industry. And so just strongly encourage you to do it. It's just easy to do, and fill out the spreadsheet and I'll do the rest of the work for you if that's what you choose. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Daniel. And next slide will show who's in charge of our Safety and Wellness Committee, and that is Chris and Kevin, and the staff liaison is Kyle. Take a look at this for just a moment. Excellent. Thank you, Greg. And again, we've got room and space for a few more of you anyway. I don't think the space is unlimited because we've got quite a healthy response. But if you'd like to register for that seminar, you can do so today, sometime during this afternoon's events or even this evening. Workforce is next in our quick review. The objectives are rather succinct but very powerful, and that is to facilitate the utilization of the labor risk management tool, including CLMA, the Construction Labor Market Analyzer, and the CWDA, the Contractor Workforce DA. Daniel, real quick. Daniel, what does the DA stand for?
Construction Workforce Development Assessment. Sorry.
Development Assessment. I always get that confused. Thank you. And then identify and recognize leading practices, best practices for recruiting, retaining, and training, improving the image, and supporting and engage the implementation of Restoring the Dignity of Work advocacy document. Their goals are listed there. I won't read every word. You can take a look at those. By the way, these PowerPoint presentations that you're observing, they're available in your app. They're also available upon request to the CURT office. These are yours for you to take and use for whatever reason you may wish moving forward. Our CURT workforce leadership is Eddie and Ed. Their next committee meeting, you can see that there, is August 25th, with August 26th being the Workforce Summit. Daniel, with his 12-year-old picture there, is our staff liaison. Groves never looks old, and I kid him about that always. You were 16 there, I'm sure. Go ahead, Greg and Greg Palmer, and show us what we've got here. And is registration open for that yet, Daniel or Greg? Can you tell us, Greg Palmer?
It is open, and the process for submitting the awards was improved over last year. Last year was the first time we started doing that electronically, as you'll recall, and we got a little bit of feedback on ways to improve it. Always welcomed. We implemented those, so that's open. And that too is on the CURT website, curt.org, and then under awards. So go do that and let us know if we can help you in any way on that.
Great, thank you, Daniel. The final set in this set of 3 is obviously the Lean Project Delivery Committee. You can see it there. You can see where its focus areas lie. And they're going to present an event tomorrow, Lean IPD's attack on improving cost, schedule, and quality. There are more details at the CURT website, again, curt.org/events, or you can call Rana or email Rana. Her phone number is right there. They're also going to be discussing integrated project delivery. What does that mean? Utilize Lean in the design process and how we can fast forward that. And what are the owners and contractors' strategy approach, especially for TAC planning, bennies, and opportunities. They're also tasked with the Project Excellence Awards. The Project Excellence Awards, again, you can apply online. They're due in a couple of months. Don't wait to the very end. Notifications in September, and again, recognition at our November meeting. So if you want some more details on that, contact Rana at the addresses given above, or go to curt.org/events. They also picked up as a goal the facilitation of and sharing of construction concepts and lean concepts within our own CURT community. We want to educate out to the industry, but we also want to educate in the vertical, educating up to senior management, educating down the organization. And then finally, providing a forum that just improves the project delivery principles as they relate to Lean. That effort is led by co-chairs Al Schwartz from Merck, Rob Wagner at Procter & Gamble. Our staff liaison, once again, is Joe Gianfrido. Take a look at this. Great, that's tomorrow. We've got space. Now here's where it gets a little bit challenging, and here's where we're gonna ask for your help. For those of you who joined us late, we want you to activate your camera. Again, the purpose of activating your camera, activating your video, and you can find that if you go in the Zoom function, the bottom left-hand corner, is to bring a sense of gathering and a sense of community, a sense of round table, if you will, to this CURT event. This is where it becomes interactive. So we've talked about safety, we've talked about Lean, and we've talked about workforce, all very, very important subjects. The big challenge then becomes, I think the question then becomes, the impact of COVID-19 on each of these areas. If you'll also just put your cursor over the center of your screen, the very bottom center, you'll see a chat box. And we encourage you to ask questions in the chat box. We've got Rana and Rob monitoring that chat box, but we're also going to give you an opportunity to chime in. Pardon me. Also going to give you an opportunity to chime in as we go along. So what challenges do you see that COVID-19 and this new normal we're emerging to or emerging from is going to have on these 3 areas? Rana and Rob, is there something in the chat box that you'd like to share with us at this point?
Not at this point. I did have a couple questions, but they're kind of in a different vein.
Okay. So we're going to open the microphone. How do you do that? You simply activate your microphone down there in the lower left and you chime in. So we're going to go to the plenary session. We're going to ask you folks, what has been your biggest challenge with respect? Let's start with workforce. What's been your biggest challenge with workforce as a result of the past 6 weeks? Who has the courage to be first? All you have to do is activate your microphone and
hi, Rob.
be highlighted.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We do have a question. How does the PPE kit for the normal craft worker change going forward?
Okay, so for our committee chairmen who are present, And representing those committees, who wants to take a gander at that? Can you repeat the question one more time for us, please, Rana?
Sure. How does the PPE kit for the normal craft worker change going forward?
All right. Hey, Greg, this is Chris Stiles.
Hi, Chris, go ahead.
Hey, if I could, I'll take a shot at that.
Please.
You know, what we're experiencing now, I think we're going to experience a lot more in the future with the need for, you know, more not health incentives, but what's the word I'm looking for? More disinfecting and things like that on our PPE. What I see really changing is, depending upon how long the virus does last, I believe we're going to continue working with at least at minimum some sort of face covering to help protect us from spreading it and the potential of it coming in contact with us. There might come a time where we might end up having to use more face shields to help with work. But one of the biggest struggles that I think most of us can agree with is the social distancing requirement. Kind of hard to do your work when you have that 6-foot requirement apart. I know we were talking a little bit earlier about risk management and disaster preparedness plans, and what we're going against now is different than most of the disasters we've had in the past. So most natural disasters, we know how to react to them. Tornado comes in, knocks things out. It's pretty much consistent how we repair and get back to work. The disaster we're facing now, if we can call it that, we're just learning what it is. So I think we've got lots of opportunities from a epidemic pandemic perspective to learn going forward. And not every pandemic, if we're unfortunate enough to have another one in the next 100 years, it probably won't look anything like this either. But we've got opportunities there when it comes to PPE. As you said earlier, what's the reasonable man standard? What would the reasonable man expect to do? And at this point, my reasonable approach is I believe we're going to be using those surgical masks and face coverings for the near future, short future.
Chris, you're with Merck. Are you going to find? Do you find that's already the case on your projects, Chris?
We are using face masks. We've required it for everybody involved. Of course, a lot of the areas that we're doing projects in right now, such as up in the New Jersey area, Philadelphia area, those are hot spots anyhow, and the government agencies have required the use of masks in those areas. So until those are relaxed and we have a little more data to support relaxing it even further, I believe that's our future for right now.
By the way, if anybody wants to follow up with anybody that's on this in this meeting, Rana and Rob can help you connect with the speaker. We won't have time to do that individually here. We'll work to see how we can provide that perhaps in the future. But if you'd like to follow up with Chris, Rana and Rob can help you do that, help you get peel that onion a little bit further, should you choose to do so. I think there's some other questions coming in. Rana and Rob, what's next?
So Greg Davis had asked for collaborative design sessions conducted in a virtual world when you don't have. So how do you do collaborative design sessions conducted in a virtual world when you don't already have established relationships with your design and construction partners? Does anybody have any?
So there again, we've got Chris and Kevin and Eddie and Ed and others, including
Al
Joe and Al
Rob.
and Rob. So these questions are directed primarily to that leadership.
So
go ahead.
This is Al. I'm going to jump in on that one a little bit. I think that there's two things that are embedded in that question in the way that you want to do it. One is the importance of having established relationships with your trade partners and what's the value that brings. I think that COVID-19 has really provided evidence that the owner firms that have a better relationship with their trade partners and their contracting partners are going to be more successful in the way that they need to do it. I mean, first of all, it works both ways. You want to talk about what kinds of precautions are you taking for their staff as their guests on your site. As an owner, you want to be able to present that in doing that. So establishing those types of relationships. If you don't already have that relationship, it becomes a little bit harder. It's going to drive your cost up. I mean, there's some, the work at Merck right now is growing relatively fast. We're working with partners that, are hiring new staff. So, getting and building the relationship, even internally with those partners is challenging. It's going to drive your costs up a little bit, but doing things like this, insisting upon use of cameras when you can do that, trying to share on those sensibilities is also an improvement. The other thing is have an open, an open policy. Don't be afraid to have those kind of private conversations and what you're trying to do. So I think that those are the types of things and strategies that you can do to build and foster a positive relationship. I think we're also getting very creative with the tools that we're using. I mean, virtual walks, one of the things that we're seeing is that, we're pairing people up on sites to be able to go, and somebody's walking with a camera. The second person is actually trying to guide and make sure that they're safe while they're using the camera. Giving virtual tours, and that's allowing C-suite type people and people that wouldn't necessarily be able to have the time to get out to see the jobs to be able to see the jobs, and utilizing the technology to be able to do that. All of these are good collaborative tools that are out there that will promote both sense of belonging and getting to know and build and accelerate trust in the way that you want to do that. And I think that's really what's at the heart of that question.
What technologies have you folks seen that really are effective? A lot of people have mentioned Microsoft Teams. Are there other tools in addition to that you folks are finding highly effective to drive collaboration, relationship building in this new normal, in this virtual world? And again, this is open to the entire plenary session. Again, all you have to do is activate your microphone and speak up. You'll be highlighted with the yellow box. We'll know who you are.
Well, it's a given that we use Hastech. We're using Zoom a lot. I mean, a lot. We have a corporate account. I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 of our employees using Zoom. So it's proven to be very, very essential for us to communicate with our clients, and it's been exceptional, actually.
It brings up a great point, Herb, and that is that the Kurt staff, we haven't missed a beat. We've been open for business every single day. We've changed the way we've done business. Everybody's working remotely, but we're constantly asking ourselves how to drive collaboration here moving forward. We will answer that question. Is there another question, Rob or Rana?
Yeah, well, Rob, this is Rob Wagner. I was on mute. I was trying to get through.
No, go right ahead, Rob.
Sorry, the collaboration tools, everybody keeps not talking about WebEx. They keep talking about Zoom. And I have to go and say is that Procter & Gamble IT security has banned the use of Zoom totally. It is an insecure site no matter what you say and do. And I'm not supposed to be on this call with you right now on my computer, just so you're aware. I'm violating company policy, so don't get me fired, Joe. So you're not allowed, and so I don't know. I mean, Zoom has jumped onto the forefront. From December, they had 2 million clients to over 100 million by the end of early April, I think it was. So I like it. I see it. It works well. So does WebEx, though. So I don't want to throw everything out. Right. I wanted to jump back to also Al's comments on collaboration, because there was an article in, I just want to, let me jump to my page here. I won't share it with you, but the Construction Dive, which is a newsletter, they talked about, if you're familiar with it or not, they talked about, in terms of lean, I think I viewed it as a lean comment versus collaboration is at an all-time high, and I think it has to do with keeping operators, craft people safe, the collaboration between owners and the group. So if anything, it is helping to build, in terms of lean, what we're doing. And as you know, as tomorrow is going to be a lean session, it's just another method of collaboration. I mean, and it forces it. This particular pandemic is causing us to talk. And that's what the whole article was about, was that they've seen massive amounts of alignment between contractors and owners in the last couple of months, which they've never seen, unprecedented collaboration kind of thing. So,
Rob, let me ask you a quick follow-up. So Pete Dumont just shared information that there's 10 to 20% erosion in field productivity due to the new safety rules and regulations. How can you implement, and Al, feel free to jump in as well, but how can you implement lean more effectively to try to scratch some of that 10 to 20% erosion in field productivity back?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's talking about what the systems are. How difficult is it to get onto your property? You have to do thermal checks. You have to get all the PPE. You have to social distance. Our sites, particular P&G, they're half a mile long. Most of our contractors get to their job by golf carts. I don't know of any golf cart that has a 6-foot diameter circle on it, shall we say. So it's one person per golf cart, very inefficient. So discussions about how you're going to go and execute that. And I think the collaborative talking, getting together and discussing how you're going to execute all that will help. But there's definitely a loss in performance factor that we have to address as an owner and understand and try to go and minimize that. I won't say you'll be able to eliminate it, because you're still going to be wearing masks, you're still going to be doing thermal checks and all the other aspects of it. But together, collaboratively, how can we as a group talk about that and get an answer? That's what I think is the important part of the lean.
I think, Rob, also to answer your question, I don't necessarily want to steal the thunder of tomorrow, but we're going to talk about some of those types of things tomorrow. You know, TAC planning. If you think about what TAC planning really is it's planning your work for a specific zone and a specific craft load and those types of things, which is exactly what we end up having to do with the social distancing requirements. Is you've got to add in the location and the number of resources that are being in there in your plan in being able to do it. So if you start to introduce those types of lean concepts into your overall planning, what's naturally going to fall out is a lot of that COVID-19 restriction requirements are going to be part of your plan going into the work, and therefore you're going to be able to maintain some more of that efficiency.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Randy. And you know, that comment that you just made there, Rob, we haven't seen that at Duke. And so obviously this has only gone on for a little over a month. We haven't got 2 months into it yet, but the early signs of productivity numbers on our projects, which did not stop, they kept going, is we saw a productivity improvement in that first month of all of these issues. And so you could attribute that to, like what Al was just saying there, more aligned planning, the men and women who are working on the project sites understanding that there's some of the few that are working, and so maybe this is a short-term bump. But I think, you know, we kind of need to let the data speak, because at least initially, and I was surprised, honestly, I thought I would see a dip, but I didn't. It went the other way, and so I'll be curious to see this next month.
This is Joe Gianfrido. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead, Joe, please.
Okay, yeah. Several of the committees are, Greg asked a great question, and it's taking the time to continue to build the relationship and grow the relationship through the virtual tools and all the different electronic tools of virtual sharing. But 3 of the committees are really like Lean tomorrow, touch base on the tech planning and the planning focus. In August, we have both international on how to maximize the CURT network on working collaboratively together, bringing it in from a global scale. And then on the workforce, of course, Daniel and the team are working, you know, how do you increase your productivity during these new rulings and new path forward that we all have to do. Also, off-site modularization, the other committee in August is getting a lot of input of there's a lot of push to go more modular and working with teams, not only from the design up front, but all the way through to maximize modularization and trying to break the cost there, where you could do it in a confined work environment, and you can spread out the workforce and spread it out in a fabrication shop versus at the job site of the owner when you're trying to keep production going. And the last one is the technology committee in November that you're getting ready for. They're talking digital twins, the design tools, and all the different areas that design comes into play early on at the front end when you're trying to develop those relationships. So there's a lot of great effort across all the committees addressing Greg's lead-in question from Greg Davis and what Rob shared, and building on Al and all the people that talked prior to here. So there's a lot of good effort to address that situation and to improve the productivity back to where we've been.
I have a question for Ed Lukenbach, Air Products. Again, he's one of the co-chairs of the very important and critical Workforce Development Committee. And he had made some comments yesterday that I found intriguing and jotted down. This whole concept of workforce development, Ed, post-COVID-19, what's it done to not necessarily productivity, but the workforce availability? And how much more important are the tools now, or the need for tools, to assess workforce competency, workforce availability at the various levels? You had some great comments, Ed. Do you care to share those again, please?
Well, Greg, I probably forgot everything I said yesterday, so thanks for that. But what I would say is that obviously this whole situation is going to have a more of an impact on what we've been already trying to do around workforce development, understanding specifically in the U.S., of course, where we are. Politically, I can see a little bit more infrastructure projects. The politics in the U.S. will drive more maybe into the infrastructure. That's just going to put even more of a drain on our workforce. We're going to have to probably double our efforts. We're going to have the same issues. I could see us looking at ways of importing some resources potentially, and looking at novel ways to do that. And especially it goes back to, you know, all these comments about modularization, the same thing. We've systematically are trying to maximize offsite construction. And that's just the Band-Aid on the problem that we just need to get a little bit of a more stronger workforce and maybe some more leadership in that construction workforce. I think there's a silver lining. I think there's going to be a little bit of a redirect and a pivot. I think we're going to have to get a little more dependent and homegrown some of our infrastructure here. People are going to want to do super big mega modules, as big, and you know, and some of the companies are already doing that. But I think there's going to be an optimal solution for some onshore work. We talked a little bit in the break about taking some of the learnings from manufacturing. And so why can't we get more of a manufacturing input into offsite construction? That sounds like a win-win to me. Bring in some of these big modules from outside, because we're always going to want to do that. Corporations are going to save money. But man, if you put all your eggs in that basket and your modules are late, your whole project's dead. So I think we're going to have to mix it up a little bit, Greg.
I think there's also some suspicion about where that modularization is done, especially when it's in China, frankly. Eddie, I noticed you're on here, Eddie Clayton, Southern Company. One of the surprising takeaways from yesterday's leadership team meetings is that the workforce development issue just got heightened and exacerbated and intensified. It's counterintuitive. You'd think with 35 million people out of work and construction, some of those being construction skilled tradespeople as well, that would have the opposite effect, that there'd be plenty. That wasn't the case necessarily. Eddie and Daniel, can you weigh in on why you feel that what we are experiencing right now, what we've experienced in the past 6 weeks, is going to have a negative impact on workforce as we see it? Thoughts?
Well, Greg, this is several of our contractors and training providers indicated that the training efforts are ongoing. Matter of fact, they're taking this opportunity to re-engage where they can the workforce and training, but it's just made it more challenging. So they're trying to be very innovative and using virtual training modules. The NCCR has done a great job putting a lot of those out. We've got several companies that now they've tried it they're not going back to the traditional paper trails that they've had to pass. Mobile labs have been reported too, but also kind of your earlier question about what the impact's been on the workforce. What was reported that a lot of areas of the company are experiencing craft workers deciding that, hey, they can make a lot more money at home on unemployment with these increased benefits than they can on job sites. So that's been creating a problem too. So we're having to deal with a myriad of issues to try to, make sure we've got the adequate workforce for our projects.
Anybody else experiencing that among the contractor community, that we're having some resistance? Just a moment, please, Rob. We're having some resistance with getting our craftspeople to return to projects because of the allowances made for being at home. Thoughts? Ed, looks like you activated your microphone.
Greg, sorry. I will tell you, and it's back to something I think Randy mentioned before, we've seen the productivity actually pretty good on our sites. We have about 9 or 10 open sites right now. All the folks that are working are highly motivated. We've seen a lot of morale. We have a very large commercial job. Our new corporate headquarters in Pennsylvania, those guys just got back. I got to tell you, the craft workforce that we have are happy to work, and they want to work, and they don't want to be sitting at the house. So I see that as a good thing.
Thanks, Ed. Rob, you had a question you were going to offer or a comment? Rob Fisher?
I was going to ask Mark from the Carpenters to weigh in. He shared some information in the chat box on what they're doing as far as recruitment goes, as safety goes. He's seeing it on the front line. So, Mark, if you would be happy to explain what you're seeing with the Brotherhood of Carpenters, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Rob. Mark?
Appreciate it, Greg. Appreciate it, Rob. So the Carpenters Union, we came out with a COVID-19 preparedness training that we rolled out at the end of March. So that went out to all 500,000 members. It's about a 60-page PowerPoint that kind of goes through a little bit of everything to do with COVID-19. And then it has an exam at the end of it as well. And then that goes right onto their training card. So when you scan their barcode on their training card, all their training comes up, and that pops up and lets you know that they've actually had that. So we've had a lot of contractors, as they've gone back to work, request that the membership has that training before they come. So that's been pretty successful. And then there's also an ICRA training. ICRA is Infectious Control Risk Assessment, which came out of the hospital industry on the carpenter side, and has also been adapted to more of the food and beverage type industrial settings. And that's an 8-hour course that we actually teach. So that one we teach to everyone. We go into hospitals and teach that to hospital staff. And then the membership can take an 8-hour awareness training, and then they can take a 40-hour training on top of that. So those are two of the programs we've started with. When we talk about some of the workforce development challenges, we have our 2 veterans programs still going at Fort Hood and Fort Drum. Those have been a challenge, especially with Fort Drum being in New York. We've seen base restrictions for visiting base. You have to live within 30 miles of the base, and then obviously with social distancing, we can't have more than 6 people in a class. So we've taken a class that we had 15 people, 20 people in, shrunk it down to 6 people at a time. So it's become challenging. But Fort Hood, there's no restrictions, so we're still moving forward there. But a lot of virtual stuff, a lot of virtual graduations, virtual interviews with contractors, which has been a challenge. So,
Mark, is it the general sense as a leader of a major American organized craft, i.e. the Carpenters, is there a sense that the workforce shortage has just been intensified by this instead of relaxed? What's your anecdotal input on that?
I would say it's been intensified, but we're also seeing a record amount of applications to get into the union as well right now. So I think as people, some of these smaller I would say smaller contractors that have been shut down, and maybe they've lost some of their steady people, they're looking for a bigger organization to come and join and try and get involved with. So we've had good luck. Like I said, we've had a lot of applicants. Our biggest challenge now is how do we get them into a training center and actually verify their skill sets and do the interview process. That's been the big challenge.
I think it's also a big opportunity with 35 million people displaced, some of them permanently, unfortunately. We may have an opportunity to make this a quite attractive industry, especially with the trades. I'll make the comment too that even though Mark's representing the carpenters, Kurt has no preferences to labor posture. We've welcomed both the open shop and the union shop to the narrative from time to time. We dance with both ladies; they both know it, and we're very, very well pleased for their very professional participation on point. We've
Greg,
got a yes. Go ahead,
let me add one more quick comment
please.
on this. I'll to follow up on Mark's point, and that is, you know, I think as we and to the points that have been made about all of the unemployed folks and how they create a great opportunity, and we welcome those folks. I mean,
Daniel, you're breaking up a little bit. I think we've heard most of what you said, but you are breaking up once again. Unfortunately, we heard about half of that, but I think we understood the gist of it.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a extra set of headphones in the back office if you want to down those. So in the interest of time, it is 1:45. We are scheduled now, if you look at your agenda, to go into another series of breakouts. These will be totally random. It'll take on the ilk of what we've done earlier. We added a couple of minutes to the other one because they were going so well. For those of you who asked questions that we did not get to, Rana and Rob from our office are monitoring those questions, and we're going to ask Rana and Rob if they would to make sure that your question gets a response. Give them a little bit of time. Obviously, they have a responsibility for this afternoon. But Greg, can we capture these set of questions that are coming in, Greg Palmer, or do they go away when the event goes away? Real quickly, Greg Palmer.
Actually, Greg, it's Rana. I'm capturing them, and so is Rob. We're fine.
Great, thanks. So if you ask a question we didn't get to, be advised that we will get to it, and Rana and Rob in our office will respond to you. Also, if you'd like some connectivity with some of the folks on the discussion that have responded, Ron and Rob can also get you follow-up contact information. As a matter of policy, we do not sell our list. We do not disclose our list. We, as Daniel likes to say, we treat it like the gold at Fort Knox. But internally, we're very liberal with whom with sharing contact information one with another, and Rob and Rana can help you do that. At this time, Greg Palmer is going to move us back into breakouts. We will likely be back in about 12 minutes for the second set of committee report outs, and then the second set of some Q&A. So Greg, take us away to the breakout sessions, if you will. You'll see a join box. Just click the join box and you'll go into your breakout session.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wait till some of the others join. Looks like they're joining. For those of you who joined after the start, we would invite you to activate your camera. Again, we're trying to create a sense of community, a sense of gathering that resembles what we normally would have had together. And the best way to do that is to participate, and the best way to do that is where appropriate, of course. Activate your camera and be a part, be seen. And we're going to continue the rest of the afternoon session. I will also tell you that if you need to take a break, we're not going to have any formal break. If you look at the agenda, there's no formal bio break or anything in between. We want to keep our momentum going. Simply feel free to excuse yourself and take your break, and then come on back and join us. For our second set of report outs today, again, the process will be that I will give a brief overview of the following committees: tech and productivity, procurement and contracting, and offsite construction, modularization, if you will. Give a few updates on that, and then the chairpersons of those committees are on here, and we'll engage in some Q&A relative to those topics. If we can have the technology and productivity slide, please. Thank you, Greg. So if you go to the next slide, you see their 2020 focus area includes their own workshop in November. The workshop theme is in process. Go back one, or go forward one, Greg, if you wouldn't mind. One slide forward, please. There we go. Driving Owners Technology Blueprint. So they're developing their owner's blueprint and the workshop. The panel discussion for the November 17th is underway. The workshop agenda items are listed there. Some terrific case studies, some digital twin and BIM discussion, some target value design discussions. All these topics will be a part of that workshop. That's going to be in Cape Coral in November. Again, the August and November sessions, so both the summer and the fall sessions for the CURT meetings are currently face-to-face. We'll see what life tosses us here in the coming weeks, but mark those dates on your calendar and plan to be with us. If you move forward, you'll see those working on that committee are Ryan and Jim, both from Vestas and Zurich, and our staff liaison is Rob Fisher. Take a look. Thank you. We look forward to your fine work there. Let's look at the procurement and contracting committee real quick, if you will. They are also going to have an event at Cape Coral on the same date. Yes, it's not a mistake. What we're doing is doubling, and we may even triple up in dates in the future, workshop offerings that are pertinent to you. Again, why? We want to make you a better, more well-informed, well-connected decision maker. It's that simple. What do we have to offer? Our experiences, our perspectives, and our collective resources that include both the networking of resources that we have internally that you've seen shared here before, and also those we create in the Blueprint series and in the workshops. The workshop agenda you see there is going to include those following areas: risk management, RFPs, RFQs, selecting the right contract, what's the legal perspective, preventing and handling those kinds of disputes under the various contract forms. How do you effectively manage contracts, especially in this post-COVID age, and tracking supplier performance through key performance metrics, terrific subjects, etc. Take a look. Oh, yes, of course, Rodney Long at Duke, supported by Rana DeBro here at the office, is managing this process. Now take a look. Sorry, Greg. Fantastic. And if you have any questions, suggestions, again, Rodney Long and Rhonda DeBro from our office, Rodney Long at Duke, Rhonda DeBro from our office, we'll be glad to take your suggestions. On the offsite construction and modularization, I think their prominence just got amped up a few points as a result of what we're dealing with today. Their 2020 focus areas include their own workshop planning on August the 26th in Philly. We're looking at also at another comprehensive owner survey. These are always very popular with the FMI, CII, the Construction Industry Institute, and ourselves, trying to ascertain owner trends and current practices relative to offsite construction modularization. Their owner blueprint series on modular assembly frameworks, modules versus stick builds, and the workshop theme that they have delineated here. Their workshop agenda will include those files. That's quite a robust lineup, but I'll give you just a moment to kind of scan through the workshop agenda that we're planning for August the 26th, just a few months away. Take a look at moment. And you also see the folks in charge of that are Mike Brewer and Bill Lewis with SOBIC, and yours truly is helping support their efforts. Take a look at this video. Great. So here comes the best part of our time together, and that is the Ask Kurt session, when we ask those co-chairs of the committees and ask some questions relative to their topics. Again, technology, productivity, procurement and contracting, offsite construction, modularization, and pre-assembly. It is about 2:06. We're going to go for about 28 minutes on this. Again, the process is the same. We have Rob and Rhonda monitoring our chat box for questions that you might ask, so feel free to fill those in. We can also have some open mic opportunities as well. For those of you who just joined the call, and there are several new ones who just joined the call, feel free to activate your video, create a sense of community here, and purposeful gathering, if you will. We'll ask you to do. There we go. There we go. Great. I'm going to start with the first question, and that is on contracting. What kind of challenges have y'all seen on the use of a force majeure clause? How many have utilized force majeure clause? What have been some of the challenges with the use of the force majeure clause? Who has the courage to be first on that one? Has anybody used the force majeure clause?
Greg, I'll jump in and get started. I will say that we have seen folks reaching out and saying, "Hey, we're alerting you that there might be a force majeure." We really have not had many folks really pull the trigger. It's been more of that, hey, we think we might have a problem. I think one thing that you will see in future contracts is maybe some change in how force majeure is defined, and there might be some pandemic language that is put in more black and white terms going forward.
Thanks, Rodney. Rodney with Duke. Any other comments on that, for the use of the force majeure, your experience with it, whether you see its use or its definition modified as we move forward? And what challenges do you see in the whole contracting concept that COVID-19 may have brought about?
I have never seen this group be that quiet.
They're thinking, and silence has never bothered me for 5 seconds, Rodney, as you all know. Sometimes they got to catch up with where we are.
Well, Greg,
I think
Pete, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Pete.
I'll take a swing at that. But, talking to a number of different owners whose capital budgets are being affected, especially in the oil and gas and energy space, because they've had the double whammy of COVID and a tank in the price of oil and their commodities prices. So, I'm hearing refreshing talk from a number of them that they've got to find a way to be much more collaborative going forward and have a different approach to how they engage the EPC world, the contractors, the suppliers, and so forth. So I don't know if that means we'll see more like IPD and collaborative types of contracting approaches, but some of the owners I'm talking to are much more actively talking about that they really now have to get serious about creating a more collaborative environment rather than one where there's finger pointing and the kind of the traditional way we tend to approach projects. So that's refreshing to hear. It's in the context of trying to drive capital efficiency, because as budgets get cut, they still have a lot of construction to do and they need to stretch those dollars further. So how do we get waste out of the process? And of course, there's talk around digitization and more technology, more modular, all of these things are very interwoven. They're not, topics that are, individually, you can approach individually. They all really have to be done in tandem. Mutually exclusive is what I was searching for there. They're not mutually exclusive topics. So, it's good to hear, sometimes when, you come out of a crisis like this, it will drive positive change. A lot of it we've been talking about in forums like this for a long time. Maybe we'll now see a lot more widespread implementation of these kind of future things, plus just the best practices, implementing the best practices we've known for a long time and we're struggling with implementing. So,
Pete, what do you think the impact of this has on the initiatives such as OS2, Operating System 2.0, and Prairie Dog Venture Partners with its analytics and all it was chasing earlier in the year? Any thought of, does it make it more prominent, less prominent? Does it revert to an OS1 concept? Where do you see the industry moving? Just your anecdotal opinion.
I think it accelerates it. That's what we're hearing is that, tell us more about this. We need to learn. We need to get, kind of on a journey towards, more digitization, more collaboration, as as I just talked about. So talking to a number of companies, they're like, all right, let's now get serious about trying to, become better than we were in the past. So all signs are that it's going to be accelerating it.
Any questions, Rana and Rob, that have come in the chat box? Just doing a quick check.
We have, going back to offsite.
Yes, please.
Pete has made some comments about the fact that not just modular, but more manufacturing approach to construction. And there's a term called constructuring. So Pete has another question here about what are the owner's perspectives on repatriating supply chains, or at least moving them out of China?
Yeah, have you all seen any action or discussion activity about repatriating your supply chain? What's it going to take? Can we overcome that typically a 25% delta to make that happen? Any thoughts?
So Greg, this is Al. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead, Al. Thank you.
So not necessarily with Merck, but one of the contractors that we're working with basically said, and this is in the biopharma area, that there is a considerable concern with overseas risks that are there, and they literally got from some of their other clients a phone call that basically says, we're moving a project from XYZ country, and bringing it to specifically North Carolina, provide us a bid today and we'll award tomorrow, literally.
Wow.
That type of thing. So I think that you're going to see repatriating happening very, very quickly with rapid decisions. It's not going to be a kind of a long drawn out type thing. It's going to be one of those things that one day you're working in some other country, and then the next day they're talking about, hey, how do we move that entire project or program or product to a elsewhere in the world, maybe even bringing it back here.
Other thoughts for those of you who have presence in China? What's the current narrative like at your shop?
Greg, this is Bill Lewis, and like I say, I've been working in China for the last year. We had some pretty good hoops to jump through, when this first started, but we've actually recovered fairly well. But it changes the risk profile when we look at projects and how we do projects and we select fabrication facilities. Things, putting all your eggs in one basket, like in China, we're opening up to look more globally at other parts of the world, and then also looking at what it's going to take to bring a lot of that fabrication back into the U.S. Like you say, there's a significant cost value there, but we're also have to figure out ways to improve on that.
Let's talk crisis management for a moment. Usually things have been natural disasters, hurricanes in New Jersey, Hurricane Sandy, fires at various plants. What comes to mind is the fire down at the Jackson Pringles plant, the only Pringles in the United States at one point, and how quickly they remobilized. How has this experience impacted your crisis management protocols? Bill, it looks like your microphone's active. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, the crisis management it's thrown a whole different view on what we have to deal with and how we manage things. One of the big things that we faced in China is actually, I'm sitting in Houston. I can't get back to China because of all the visa restrictions and flights are huge issue right now. Not near as many flights if I can get a visa. And then of course our company, has to look at how do we protect our people and how do we guarantee our people overseas are going to be safe, and if something does happen, how do we mitigate that, and how do we get people safely into a health system that's more comparable to what they're used to. It's just...
Others,
Greg,
yeah, go right ahead.
Kevin Sell, just wanted to add, none of us that are attending this meeting, none of us that are actually, there's not a person walking this earth has any experience with this. So I think more to Bill's point, there's no playbook, whether you're an owner, contractor, union, supplier, whatever, there's nothing there. And what it has done, what we've seen it do on both from the users that we work with and from the contracting side, is that it's called more attention to total employee health in terms of the mental illness part, because the pandemic spun into place an added variable of mental illness pressure that forced, hopefully you were already looking at it, but if you weren't, you had to. So I think we come out of this better as an industry because we're focusing just not on the safety side. Oh my God, it's fall protection, we got to do something about it. Well, by God, it's mental illness and we got to do something about it. So that's where we're seeing a change, and it's very much needed and welcomed in the industry.
Other changes to your crisis management approach as a result of this, or how are you going back and reevaluating the effectiveness of what I'll call, for lack of a better term, your crisis management team? Other thoughts?
Well, if I could add, it's certainly, we have added a essentially virtual meeting for the executive team. Pete knows a little bit about what we do here, but also in the future, we're going to have more of a sit rep type of, copying it from the military. The military knows better than anyone on how to manage these crises on a day-to-day basis. So we're in the process of looking at, putting more monitors in the executive room so we can see what's going on at all sites 24/7, pushing Zoom out to the site so we can see everything, be there, even though we physically can't be there. But it causes in the crisis plan, it's more, when it comes to a pandemic, it's more of a 24/7, hour by hour change, because we weren't just, we were focused on protecting our employees first. But Greg, you and I had some dialogue about this. There were also some business protection legislation that was passed. And if we look at comparing just United Group Services and CURT, we had the bank, we had a relationship, we seized the PPP loan, we kept people on payroll. Talking to you, you had a bigger bank and you were very frustrated. So I think what has to occur in a crisis plan now is you also have to do legislative and financial as well, to make sure that you're trying to shore yourself up so you can come out of this.
Great point. Other comments? There's another question. Yes, go right ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so one of the things we're talking about with our clients is, it's one thing to deal with one crisis, and this, like it's already been said, nobody's ever been through this, but we're also about to come to hurricane season. And how are you going to deal with two or multiple crises of such massive magnitude? And so most crisis management plans don't really compound those elements together, because it's a whole different world when you're trying to deal with this, and then all of a sudden you have a natural disaster on top of it. So we're starting to work with our clients on, okay, what are you going to do? Because this is not going away anytime soon. And we know other things are still coming.
Along that same route, talking safety, particularly the drug testing programs that all of us have in effect to some degree. I know some areas around the country and some owners and contractors, for precautionary purposes, have suspended the random tests, which is almost a green light for the trouble worker to use, period. And I think we're gonna see some of that show up on our job sites as well, is accident and injuries caused by drug use. I think also the high anxiety level that so many have to deal with for those who had a propensity for use, or perhaps are in recovery, and now we've suspended random testing. I think that's going to present a real challenge moving forward. One of the things that CURT was bringing to light as late as February was the whole idea of the suicide rate in the construction industry being among the highest in the country in terms of our industry statistic. Is this going to exacerbate that? And if so, what are we going to do about it? What can be done about it? To Kevin's point about overall health and well-being, I think we're going to have to begin to consider some of these things. Is it too early to tell whether or not drug abuse is cropping back up on the job site? Thoughts about that point? And have you all suspended randomized testing in order to assure both the labs and the worker safety during this pandemic? Thoughts on that?
Hey, Greg, this is Bill Lewis again. I think on the sites where we do drug testing, we continue to do drug testing. One of the things that we have had to do, a lot of our agreements with the local governments, and even in China, is we had to agree to a health screening process and documentation. And when you have 4,000 or 5,000 people a morning coming through the gate, and you've got to take the temperature and document that for everybody, it's a huge issue. Now we're doing a lot better, and I think the technology is supporting us some, but that was a huge change we had to make.
Are you doing that at all sites, Bill? Temperature testing, temperature taking?
Yes, as far as I know. I'm only tied into most of our mega projects, but the mega projects we definitely are
on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, and we have to keep the records, and actually we've been audited by some of the local governments on some of them. They've come in and wanted to check they put inspectors in our sites.
Any other comment on point? One of the questions that came in via text is, give me just a moment to pull it back up. Yes.
This is Rob Wagner. Just
yeah, please,
before
go
we
ahead,
move on,
Rob.
it's kind of the same question, but it's a little different slant. The traceability. So once you have an incident at your site, then the traceability of the illness and all that, that's I think I'll almost say an elephant in the room here in North America. How do you trace back? How do you do that trackability back to the individual? Who do they touch? Who do they come in contact with? And I mean, I've been reading and watching a lot on BBC and others, and South Africa came up as a point, saying it's one of the poorest countries in the world, and they were really worried about it. They have one of the best traceabilities, though, and they went back to saying, well, they've had Ebola and they've had HIV, and they've been doing trackability or traceability for a long time. I think the question in North America, one of the changes that might come up is Homeland Security said, oh, well, we can trace people through their cell phones and all of that. And so I think there's a civil liberties and other issues. When you get to South Africa, that's not so much an issue because of the government. So it's interesting that they're not seeing the same levels, or they're seeing a response to COVID completely different than what would be expected because of they already had a plan in place. They don't have a good health system, but they have a really good traceability. And I think that's one thing that we could look at and learn, and that we probably have to do long term that North America has not yet figured out.
Great point, Rob. Procter & Gamble. The other point that comes to mind on that issue is the more you know, the more you're responsible for. Where there is an undertaking to know, now, what is the reasonable care moving forward, given that you know, or you should have known? So if those protocols are in place and you neglect to respond to them, or if those protocols are in place and you feel you're doing a good job to try to help the worker on the traceability issue, what kind of liability exposure have I now undertaken in order to take reasonable care to move forward? And by the way, what's the industry standard? Well, it doesn't exist right now. And so it's important how we collectively respond, because we become that industry standard. And I'm confident there'll be some litigation that emerges on the human resources issue here with, maybe wrongful death issues. I think one of the things that the president and the states are going to have to get their arms around is tort reform. Restaurants are in the same shape. We have friends that are restaurateurs, and they've got a couple of very, very nice restaurants here in Cincinnati. And they're thinking, what liability exposure do I have now opening my door? I can't just unlock it, and it can't just be business as usual like before. And what liability exposure have I now created that could result in some litigation moving forward when people, if people contract this, or if they've been exposed, or God forbid dies, there are wrongful death action against the restaurant. And I think we have to ask the same things about our job sites. And as far as the legal issues, that's a real legal issue given our litigious society. So tort reform, I think, is something we're going to have to advocate. And again, CURT is not an advocacy organization. We do no lobbying. I want to make that very clear, but we're going to have to monitor what's going on in that regard, because it could impact every single one of us. One of the questions asked on repatriation is this repatriation expected to be a long-term concept or a short-term response to COVID? When it comes to repatriating and bringing your supply chain more US-centric, do you think that's going to be permanent long-term, or do you think it's just a short-term knee-jerk response? Any thoughts on that?
Just one item of thought there. I think you have to delineate a little bit whether the business is simply manufacturing in China and importing to the US for cheaper services, or whether they're a global company doing business in China. I think companies always optimize their supply chain, so it will always be optimized as real time as it can get. But at least for our organization that does do business globally, I don't see much change for that, knowing that others may be completely different.
Ryan Furtick with Vestas. Thank you. Any other input? Ed, I see you activated your mic. Go right ahead.
I would say ask me on November 3rd that question.
Yeah, true.
Because quite honestly, I mean,
hold on,
part of this is politics, and it's just the way things work in today's world. So you have this competing interests of the corporations are going to continue to have to make money. It's just the way life is. You got a little bit of an issue with maybe a bit of a pivot, again, like I said before, and then you're going to have politics, which, you know, we all watch the different channels we watch. So I think we're going to see an interesting, we'll see what happens in the US in November.
I just want to relate back to history. Walmart had a made in America policy a few years ago. Big, patriotic move, and that has gone the wayside. So I have a feeling that history repeats itself, and there may be a pull towards made in America or, closing the doors, but it's going to reopen again as he points out, international companies compete internationally. So we've got manufacturing sites all over the globe, not just in North America from a Procter & Gamble perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you look back, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, and a lot of these countries know how to deal with these pandemics better because they've had to live through MERS and SARS and H1N1 and the bird flu. And one of the things that's common about all these is we do recover, and then it's back to business as usual. I mean, if you look at SARS, how we reacted to that, and now that's long gone and forgotten.
Great. Any final thoughts on that point? A couple of closing remarks as we move to the next part of our afternoon, and that is, if you'd like to be involved in one of these committees and you're currently not, and you'd like to put your organization's thumbprint on the issues, please see Rana and Rob, reach out to them and express your interest. We won't sign you up for anything that you don't know what you're signing up for. We don't want any surprises, but they'd be very happy to talk to you about our various committees and where you can play an important part. To our committee chairpersons, and we shared this yesterday, they're going to be tasked with looking at these pillars, if you will, where issues seem to be concerned. We mentioned technology, we mentioned productivity, we mentioned workforce, we mentioned the new safety normal, regulatory compliance, what are the new OSHA regs that are going to come out on this, and the repatriation issues. We're going to be tasking our committees this summer with picking up this issue. It would be irresponsible of us to allow us to proceed forward without inculcating this reality, this experience into the fabric of our product and services. So that goes with every committee. It's also an exciting time of opportunity. I heard a CEO from a Fortune 100 company who happens to be a friend of mine the other day, and he said, I think some of the biggest companies are going to be formed during this time. I think the construction's had an earthquake, and you're going to see some real solutions come out. He advocated very optimistically that there were some real opportunities here for the creative thinker. And I think that's us. And we got to get in front of this and lead the industry. They're going to be looking for leadership, and we want to certainly be in front of that. Again, if you've joined our meeting late, activate your video if it's appropriate. We'd love to see you and bring you into the visual part of the meeting. If you have questions, please use that chat room or the chat box, or as you've seen here today, just activate your microphone and join in. If you need to take a break, simply excuse yourself and go do it. We will not be taking an organized break. The rest of the afternoon, we have two very, very interesting presentations that we're excited to bring to you. And then following the end of these presentations, we'll wrap up and we'll go into what's called a virtual happy hour. We'll tell you how that works shortly. We're also going to be giving away a very nice prize for those of you who stick with us the entire time. The system has an ability to pick a number, I think, or we pick a number or put you, Palmer explained it to me, but one of you will walk away with something very nice that we'll send it to you shortly. I want to introduce to you at this time Miss Jessica Richardson. Jessica is a part of the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. She's the Professional and Organizational Advancement Manager for that Board of Certified Safety professionals. She has comprehensive experience in developing and managing occupational safety and health systems, training, etc., instructional design in the workplace. She has her bachelor's in safety environmental management. She has her master's in organizational performance and workplace learning, and a PhD pending at Capital University. And today she's going to talk to us about human performance improvement. How do we drive human performance improvement at all levels, craft level, management level, etc. And hopefully she'll be bringing us some insight also on the impact that this pandemic has had on that subject. So Jessica, it's all yours. Palmer, if you'll tee up her PowerPoint presentation. By the way, these PowerPoint presentations are available in the app or upon request to the Curt office. And we're going to turn it back over to you, Jessica. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Can everyone see my screen? Am I sharing appropriately?
Yes, you are, 100%. Thank you.
Perfect. So I'm really excited to talk to this group about human performance. It's not a new field. It's been around for years and years. Actually started in the 50s in a different form. Like most things, it's evolved. The reason that I got into human performance improvement as a construction safety nerd was I started getting into nuclear construction and maintenance. So I got a really good dose of what was going on, you know, in the field. So human performance can be known by many names. It's also known as human and organizational performance. We typically call it HPI, human performance improvement. And it's really tied nicely into lean management, Six Sigma, instructional design and technology, human factors, workplace learning, and training. The big concept here today that I hope that you take away from this presentation is that this isn't a program. It's not behavior-based safety. It's really a set of concepts and principles associated with performance models. And they illustrate that the organizational context of human performance and how it works in the real world. Human performance is viewed as a system that comprises a network of elements that work together to produce repeatable outcomes. The system has a few factors, including organizational factors, your job site conditions, your individual behavior, and then results. It's focused on improving performance at the societal, organizational, process, and individual performer levels. So today, what I'm going to do is start with explaining the human performance principles. We're going to talk a little bit about Paul O'Neill, former CEO of Alcoa. And then I'm going to show you the tools that you guys can use on your job sites at the management level, at the worker level, and at team levels to basically, start your human performance improvement journey. So I prepared this presentation a few months ago. And unfortunately, on April 18th, Paul O'Neill passed away. So this kind of changes my tone a little bit. But he's someone who's very important to me from a perspective of a leader, a safety leader at the highest levels. So I had the opportunity to meet with Paul, the former US Treasury Secretary, for a whole 11 months, probably for the reasons he was so good at being a CEO. He only lasted 11 months. And he was the former CEO of Alcoa, famously. Prior to Alcoa, I do want to mention that he was also the CEO of International Paper, which has a really strong safety culture to this day. I have several safety management students who went to work for them and have nothing but good reports. So when Paul became CEO of Alcoa in 1987, at his Wall Street introduction, he said, "I want to talk to you about worker safety. Every year, numerous Alcoa employees are injured so badly that they miss a day of work. Our safety record is better than the general American workforce, especially considering that our employees work with metals that are 1,500 degrees and machines that can rip a man's arm off. But it's not good enough. I intend to make Alcoa the safest company in America. I intend to go for zero injuries." He delivered that message at every plant he visited. And as a point of emphasis, he shared his home phone number with the employees, telling them to call him personally if they had unmet concerns about safety. And they called him. Alcoa's injury rates were already pretty historically low, industry bests. But in his first 2 years, the injury rates declined quite significantly. And instead of, sending out a congratulations on reducing the number of injuries, Paul wrote a memo to the company that said, "I want to congratulate everyone for bringing down the number of accidents. We shouldn't celebrate because we followed the rules or brought down a number. We should celebrate because we're saving lives." So Paul's foundations are value-based organizations and value-based relationships. And if you think about safety, safety is kind of the thread that ties us all together in an aspect of humanity, not just the workplace, right? It's kind of more visible now. But Paul always said that dignity and respect are infectious in a large organization. And he put the onus on leadership to take that responsibility to have and produce an environment where people can work in a value-based organization. And that starts with, the first promise of that, and making good on that proposition is that people are our most important asset. And in order for an organization to be habitually excellent, which was the foundation of Paul's leadership, he said that the leader needs to establish an environment where each worker can answer yes to 3 questions. The first question you see there is, am I treated with dignity and respect? Am I treated with dignity and respect by everyone, no matter of rank or reporting structure, no matter their age, gender, race, education, pay level, etc.? Everybody in an organization has to be able to say that they're treated with dignity and respect every day by everyone that they encounter. And that's the foundation of the values-based organization. The second question, am I given the things I need in this organization? Education and training, financial support, encouragement, so that I can make a contribution to this organization that gives meaning to my life. Think about that. Paul gave an example of a hospital environment, and in Paul's later years, he spent a lot of time and money and effort looking at performance improvement in hospital systems because the gaps were big and there are ways to improve. And his explanation was, if you properly explain to the people who clean the operating rooms how important their job is and how important their work is, then they fundamentally know that they're as important as a surgeon, and they don't have the same degree. They don't have the same education, but they are just as important as that person performing the surgery because their work is meaningful. And then third, am I recognized every day? And here's the important part, by someone whose judgment I value, right? So we all deserve to be, encouraged and recognized. The big thing Paul used to always make sure people knew was that if you have people in your organization who violate these principles, they need to be retrained or excused. Tolerating behaviors that violate dignity and respect, especially, what you're going to do is lose credibility within your organization. And Paul, 2 years ago, I met Paul down in Pittsburgh at his office on the North Shore next to the PNC Park where the Pittsburgh Pirates play. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my experience with him later, and maybe over a virtual happy hour, I can tell you what he had to say 2 years ago on tariffs. But he really set the stage for what leadership looks like. We talked a little bit earlier about safety compliance and traditional safety practice. It's absolutely necessary. And we're going to talk a little bit more about organizational maturity later, so I don't have to harp too much on this. I just want to say that safety compliance is necessary, and it does prevent some occupational injuries and illnesses. That being said, command and control compliance doesn't equate to safety excellence. These laws are bottom of the barrel. If you're not meeting, basic OSHA regulations, there's some serious issues in the organization. Even OSHA recognized way back in 1989 that regulations don't equate to excellence. They created their safety and health program management guidelines. And that addressed leadership, worker participation, hazard identification, planning, and training. So just to mention that, this is traditional safety practice is a part of it, but it's not really, what we look at when we talk about HPI. So there are 5 principles of human performance improvement. And if you can't get behind these, I don't know if you can get behind this approach. We talked about it a little earlier. HPI emerged from educational instructional technology in the 50s, and it really evolved into a performance excellence system. So these 5 principles are described in the DOE standard, Department of Energy standard for human performance, and which I list as a resource at the end of this slide for you. The first principle is that people are fallible, and even the best people can make mistakes. It's human nature to err, and all have different capabilities and limitations. This means that human performance can't be the only defense in place during critical activities. You have to consider the human potential for errors, the task, the workplace, and organizational factors that shape the likelihood and consequences of errors. The second principle is that we can predict, manage, and prevent error-prone situations. Error traps in the workplace, they can be detected, they can be recognized, prevented, removed, or reduced using concepts like prevention through design and human factors engineering. So if we change that work situation to prevent, remove, or minimize the presence of conditions that provoke error, task and individual factors at the job site can be managed to prevent or at least minimize that chance of an error. The third principle of human performance is understanding the behavior happens in a system. This principle helps get organizations out of the blame game during incident analysis and ensures that they reflect on organizational processes, procedures, and systems that contributed to an error and incident. So to quote Edward Deming, don't blame people for problems created by the system. The fourth principle requires that we understand that all behavior is reinforced, and most of the time that occurs through consequences the individual experiences when the behavior occurs. And because behavior is influenced by the consequences that the worker experiences, what happens to workers when they exhibit certain behaviors is an important factor in improving human performance. So that positive and immediate reinforcement for expected behaviors is ideal. And the fifth and final principle of human performance is that learning shouldn't just happen after somebody gets hurt, killed, or an incident takes place. We have to be proactive about learning to continuously improve performance. Traditionally, we looked at corrective actions, operating experiences, facility events, and problem reports, which are all things we need to do. But when we talk about HPI, we really need to talk about organizational learning from a proactive perspective. These are some key terms I wanted to discuss today about HPI. We could probably do a semester-long class or 7 on all of these principles. So this is a really high-level overview. You can see there the definition of error. It's an action that unintentionally departs from an expected behavior. It's not intentional, and it should not be considered for violations. And then we talked a little about error precursors. Those are those unfavorable prior conditions at the job site that increase the probability for error during a specific action. They're also known as error likely or error prone situations. And then again, understanding that human performance addresses the origin of error by looking at the whole system, including the workers, the task, and the organization. HPI's systematic and systemic approach to improving competencies and safety and productivity. It's grounded in scientific theory, and it's focused on achievements that are valued by individuals in the organization. Where we start with HPI is that error is inevitable. And error is a symptom of problems within organizational symptoms. This approach proposes using leading indicators, minimizing negative consequences, and other strategies that drive underreporting of incidents and near misses, including the people who do the work in identifying safety solutions. This is a really important concept to make organizations understand the difference between errors and violations. It's very critical. Violations are deliberate, on purpose. Errors are not. Errors can be skill-based, decision-based, or perceptual in nature. So skill-based errors could be not maintaining proper speed or clearance while driving. Decision-based errors are often honest mistakes where someone doesn't have the level of knowledge needed to make a good decision in the field. That could be inadequate planning. Perceptual errors occur when sensory input's reduced. That happens when we deal with things like fatigue. Violations are a little different, and they're typically broken down into 2 categories. They're known as routine or exceptional. So those routine ones are seen as organizationally bending the rules, and they're typically tolerated by supervision or management, like not following a procedure. Exceptional violations are isolated events where a worker deviates from the procedures. but it's not tolerated by supervision and management. An exceptional violation could include disregarding a weather report for wind while conducting rigging and hoisting operations. So basically, when a worker commits a violation, they're making a conscious decision to violate a rule, whereas an error can be made when a worker is trying very hard to do the right thing and perform in an error-free way. Workers should never be disciplined for committing errors, right? Because we know that's part of human nature. Another concept I want to bring about is normalization of deviance, and I picked that picture for a reason. One is I'm a safety nerd. Two is, you know, when we talk about processes through which unacceptable practices or standards become acceptable, an easy one in construction is looking at your guards on your grinders. So this term was coined by Diane Vaughan after analyzing the Challenger disaster. She stated that the cause of the Challenger disaster was related to the repeated choice of NASA officials to fly the space shuttle, despite an incredibly dangerous design flaw with the O-rings. So deviant behavior essentially is repeated without catastrophic results, then it becomes socially acceptable and normal for the organization. Social normalization of deviance means that workers within your company become accustomed to a deviant behavior and they don't even consider it as deviant, despite the fact that they far exceed their own procedures or rules. The big thing about normalization of deviance, when we talk about human performance, you'll hear phrases like work is done and work is planned. Those are two very different realities in the field. And usually work is planned is very different from how the work is actually completed. So when we talk about how normalization of deviance happens, it's not an overnight thing. This is usually, you know, repeated behavior over and over. So systems thinking, this is really about taking a macro view. It encourages that collaborative discussion between different disciplines. And you really have to understand that everything is interrelated. There are interdependencies, interconnectedness of every process with every human interaction. So when we think about causal factors, you have to understand if you're improving human performance, it's rarely going to be a single intervention that makes it happen because these systems are complex. So improving performance is going to require an array of learning and non-learning interventions to move the organization towards its goals. The success of any intervention that involves people depends on appropriate communication, both interpersonal and intrapersonal. So for example, when safety professionals offer a recommendation to improve a facet of a system, they should apply macro thinking to the problem to determine how application of the recommendation may apply to other aspects of the work, really taking into context exactly what parts of the system could be affected. So when we talk about organizational maturity, everyone who's on this call is probably going to be able to peg your organization as I go through where you are on the organizational maturity path. This comes from INCHPO, the International Safety and Health Professional Organization. In 2017, they developed this organizational maturity model, and it basically explains where companies typically lie in the order. So stage one's pathological, not a place you want to be, but some of us have been there. That describes an organization that doesn't care about workplace safety and health. It's apathetic. Here, safety professionals, all they can do is implement basic strategies to fulfill compliance requirements. Try to persuade the organization to move up, but realistically, not a good place to be. Stage two is a reactive culture. So that's what it sounds like. A company that cares about safety only after an accident or incident's occurred. Basically, the organization gets caught up in an accident cycle where safety is only important after a loss occurs. Stage three is calculative. And that's a bureaucratic level of safety culture. It's really about rules. It's a rule-bound caring. Safety and health are compliance-based, policy-based, procedure-based. And their compliance is meeting the minimum standards. Here you can really, start managing risk, which is good for safety professionals, but stage three, probably not going to get to a human performance mindset. We move on to stage 4, we have proactive organizations, and they care about safety and they're interested in finding innovative strategies beyond rules. This level of safety maturity involves formal strategies for risk management, pre-incident investigation, prevention, and really the learning organization is identifying your leading and lagging indicators based on your approach to safety management. And then at the top, we have a generative organization, stage 5. You're optimized. The entire organization generally cares about safety, fully understands the interactions between the social and the technical aspects of the work, and they're mature enough to be mindfully rule guided, right? So they're adaptive, but not stuck to the books. So when you think about which companies can implement human performance, you really have to have some organizational maturity. So I put together 6 questions to ask if your organization's actually ready for a human performance mindset. And the first one is, are you committed to providing a safe and healthy workplace beyond what compliance requires? It's a yes or no. If it's compliance only, it's probably not for you. 2, will you provide competent resources? You know, in this model, your safety practitioner, your safety professional is an advisor, an organizational advisor. Are you providing, you know, certified safety professionals, construction health and safety technologists on the job site? Have their competencies been validated? Do you have the right people in the right roles? 3, are you prepared for transparency, continuous learning, and communication that empowers workers? The big thing that Paul O'Neill talked about a lot was effectively getting rid of rank and structure in order to improve communication. There's been several recent whistleblower you know, things going on in our country, and when you look at transparency, most organizations are going to balk at that, and one of the reasons Greg mentioned earlier is we have a litigious society. So really, I mean, you're opening up the basket and you're saying, let's fix it. Let's find the problems, let's own them, and let's move forward. Are you willing to change the way that work gets planned and completed in the name of performance improvement? And when it comes to CURT members and advanced work packaging, most of you are already on board with that. But the reality is that planning is the most important part. And the planning has to extend from all disciplines to the foreman level, right? Because we need everyone to be on the same page. Another problem because of our litigious society is, are you willing to evaluate, disclose, and manage organizational risks? A lot of other countries are a lot better at this than us. And that is because of the way we're oriented from a legal standpoint. Some countries actually require, most in the European Union and parts of Asia, require that organizations disclose their health and safety and human capital risks to investors, because they won't let people invest in companies without knowing how they take care of their people, how they develop their people, and their health and safety risk. We're very far off from that culturally in the US. And then, are you willing to lead by example, participating in the continuous improvement of safety performance? One of the best construction managers I worked with would walk around the job site with his safety professionals, mostly me, and he would pick up the tiniest pieces of trash on that job site while he was walking around. Like, that's just how he operated. Because of his simple leadership and action demonstration of picking up tiny pieces of trash, it was the cleanest job site we've ever been on. So something that micro level turns into something macro, right? And that leadership, leading by example, is what Paul O'Neill talks about a lot in reducing cynicism in the organization. So leadership and communication. This is pretty much, the most important defense to human error. Improved communication is necessary throughout the organization to ensure that follow-up and review of the effectiveness of corrective and preventative actions issued. Lessons learned dissemination is pretty much the most important thing going on for preventing serious injuries and fatalities. So when you talk about safety management systems and more of that traditional safety compliance, it's the same worker communication and leadership communication are what ties us together. And those leaders should communicate their values, their priorities, a questioning attitude, and evidence-based decision-making. The big thing is the questioning attitude. You know, especially with labor shortages and issues with new leaders coming in and filling in the gaps for retirement, you know, this questioning attitude is a big thing. And if your organization doesn't require it, you're going to have problems. Because when you have a questioning attitude, you have people challenging you internally to be better and to consider things that maybe you've been doing for 20 years, and maybe there's an easier and faster way. So when we think about evidence-based decision-making, that leadership communication is going to be, you know, the most important thing. Next, I'm going to go over a few methods and tools at different levels from a human performance standpoint. So there are a number of tools available for identifying organizational conditions that are latent, meaning they're undetected. The DOE Human Performance Improvement Handbook lists all these methods in detail. The methods in this category are designed to be used by managers and supervisors to help identify weaknesses in the organization. They're mainly undetected deficiencies in organizational processes or values that create workplace conditions that provoke error or degrade the integrity of your defense. So these undetected deficiencies are really what hurts human performance. You know, some examples we can talk about, the self-assessments, operating experience, lessons learned. The one I have highlighted there is corrective action program. You know, a lot of people can call them corrective and preventive action programs, but I will say this, from what I've seen in organizations that truly embrace human performance, I would say that your corrective action program will be active, and it will be the most important trust building method of human performance in the company. People are going to report problems. They're only going to report problems if they feel safe enough to report them, that they've been encouraged to have a questioning attitude. So number one, if you're getting reports, that's a good sign. Then the follow-up and the review of your corrective actions is how you build trust, right? Well, we have several lighting issues that have been this way for 5 years. Somebody fix it. You go out and fix it. You made a new best friend. Some other things you can talk about for management: performance indicators, trending, oversight, and then change management, which I'll dive into a little bit more deeply later. So at the individual level, they're also found in that DOE second volume. The basic purpose of these tools is to help the individual performer maintain positive control of a work situation. And positive control means that what is intended to happen, happens. And that's all that happens. So using these human performance tools doesn't guarantee perfect job performance, but those folks can greatly reduce their chances of making an error by using the tools thoughtfully and rigorously. So task reviews, job site reviews, that questioning attitude. I'm sure you've all implemented versions of these on your job site. You stop when you're unsure. Self-checking, you know, effective communication. So, you know, the phonetic alphabet is something that's really effective when you're talking about, you know, we're working on steam generator alpha, steam generator bravo, right? Instead of A and B. And that three-way communication is really effective in making sure that the right message goes out and practicing that. And then placekeeping with your procedures. So these are all mentioned in detail in that DOE handbook. So for teams, we know safety's a team job. It depends, these tools depend on the task's hazards and complexity, and how often you perform the jobs, how long the jobs last, so their duration, requiring multiple shifts or work groups, and then management's need for feedback on the work completed. The tools in this category require coordination and participation of 2 or more individuals, supervisory involvement, and management support. There are 12 methods listed in the DOE Human Performance Handbook. The first one's pre-job briefing, which obviously is critical to understanding the hazards and mitigations for the crews with their hands on the job. Your verification practice, including your peer checks, flagging, turnover, which is obviously a high-risk time for most projects, project planning, post-job reviews, problem solving, your vendor oversight, all these ways to detect those organizational weaknesses and make sure that your organization is prepared to move forward and continue to improve. This is called the behavior engineering model, and it's one of the most useful tools for a human performance improvement practitioner, safety person. I use it frequently. I teach it all the time. It's fundamental to understanding human behavior and the organizational environment. Gilbert focuses on performance improvement potential and getting the most cost-effective solutions by addressing deficiencies identified with models. So this is basically a needs assessment light. It breaks up and assesses components that affect the individual worker, the individual traits, and the organizational environment that the individual performs in. The BEM asks, does the worker have the knowledge, capacity, motives, data, instruments, and incentives to perform the work? The BEM is useful for construction safety professionals because it helps to prescribe interventions that will solve the performance problem. So when you think about retraining and safety, for safety professionals, one of the best ways to get people to hate you is to assign safety training whenever the problem isn't at the individual knowledge level. So only one of those boxes requires training as an intervention solution, the knowledge level. If people don't have the right data, resources, incentives, capacity, or motive, you can't retrain them to fix a problem that didn't exist. So that's why I really like this BEM. The next thing I want to cover with you all is intervention alignment. And this is pretty, obvious to most of us, but when we're talking about how do we fix the problem? Is it training? Is it an incentive program? Is it a procedure? You have to, number one, consider the appropriateness. Does this fit in this organizational culture? Does this make sense for who we are and how we do business? 2 is cost, obviously. Can we afford to do this? 3, is it feasible? And then, the big one here is organizational and worker acceptance. And there are several ways and change management strategies we'll talk about in the next few slides. But realistically, when you're picking ways to solve problems, you really have to consider the context of the problem and the context of the organization and how those work together to get a good fix. So this is, I put this together post-COVID, which is now it's kind of cute and funny. But this comes from Kurt Lewin. It's called a force field analysis. Kurt Lewin's work is probably some of the most important contributions to the field of social psychology. This theory has been transformed into analysis tools called force field analysis. So this method can be used during the change management phase or while selecting an intervention. Implementing a new intervention is likely going to change some things in your organization. And why we use this tool is to basically reveal the driving forces and the restraining forces towards the change. For example, your company wants to explore reducing motor vehicle incidents by eliminating unnecessary travel for meetings. So our desired states are less travel. Our driving forces, we have web conferencing, we have the tech. We want less commuting. Our restraining forces are we have a cultural value on face-to-face communication. And we have a resistance to tech, right? So in this case, the restraining forces outnumber the driving forces. So before you implement a change or announce it, you should interview workers to see how they're going to perceive that change. You may find out that they like new technologies for web conferencing, and they like the convenience of less commuting. Maybe they're taking more walks, like Rana said she was today in our breakout, right? There's ups. You might also find out that workers value face-to-face and interpersonal relations, and they're resistant. So the resisting and restraining forces work against your change effort. What you can do is basically address those stakeholder concerns proactively. This is another quick tool I wanted to introduce you guys to. It's called the 4 motivational switches. and comes from Hagen Addison in 2012. So this has to do with incentive programs, because as a safety professional, I've seen some good incentive programs, but mostly I've seen some ineffective incentive programs. So the point of this is, if an employee answers no to any one of the 4 motivational switches questions, then that employee is going to have a motivational issue with completing the work, right? So do I understand what's being asked of me? If you say no, they're lacking that data from the BEM. Can I do it? Maybe they're lacking knowledge or capacity. Will I be permitted? Do I have the resources? Do I have the tools, right? And then do I feel like it? And that comes to the incentive and motivation levels. So that's another great tool to use when you're considering interventions. When we talk about change management planning, we could do a whole presentation on change management for you guys too. But these are some common tools that industries are using in change management planning. Newsletters are really effective in keeping that communication. Having a change leader directory, who are key players. This one I think is probably the most valuable. It's the supervisor and opinion leader change management class. So as we all know, there are certain people within our organizations who may not have the leadership title, but people follow and listen to them. Those are the people you need to engage in your change management planning. Make sure your messaging is coordinated. Have work group meetings on your change issues. Do a survey. Have people answer, even if your survey is you walking around and getting thumbs up or thumbs down, right? You're getting out there and you're getting information. Some other things for change could be hands-on experiences and training to help facilitate that change and translate that to the actual job. Give folks lots of practice, lots of support, job aids, frequently asked questions. And then, of course, your leadership participation and example. So I wanted to talk really quickly about some examples in industry. This 2020 rule I heard from utility construction recently. Take every 20 minutes, take 20 seconds to look 20 feet each way around you, right? So that's kind of a, stop and check, STAR type of rule from a human performance standpoint. One of the things please don't get mad at me, but I'd ask you guys to keep an open mind on this. I included that picture for a reason, because language matters. When we tell people 100% tie off, what they hear is tie off 100% of the time. What they should be hearing is prevent or protect your fall. So on a lot of job sites, if you keep saying 100% tie off, what you get is people tying off the handrails, and most likely they have 6-foot lanyards on that wouldn't protect them unless they were 18 or 20 feet off the ground and tied off above their head. So when you think about language, I just ask that we really ask people what we want them to do specifically. And I used to say 100% tie off, I've stopped. It's protect to prevent your fall. And then another one I want to talk about is sticky, stuff that can kill you. The S word can mean something else too, stuff that can kill you. This is a focus on serious injury fatality prevention. It's kind of like a expert level communication. One of the things I've heard from the consultants in human performance is that, sprained ankles don't kill people, so let's focus on stuff that can kill us. And I'm not going to name any names, but I will tell you this. In an era in construction where musculoskeletal disorders do lead to addiction and drugs and pain problems and lifelong issues, we do have to be concerned about musculoskeletal disorders, because honestly, in our industry, it can kill us too. Not quite as quickly in some cases. I do want to mention leading indicators. They're more predictive and proactive in nature. A lot of organizations have issues, naming those leading indicators, but it's important that we move that way. I think of lagging indicators as the rear window of a vehicle, showing what's happened in the past, and those leading indicators are the front windshield, giving a view of what's coming ahead. So your leading indicators should allow you to see small improvements in performance, measure the positive, enable frequent feedback, be credible to workers, be predictive, and track impact versus intention. You know, monitoring and measuring these leading indicators involves communicating progress, updating folks, reporting meaningful data, and bringing attention to milestone achievements, problems, or data. You know, the past we've measured how many people we've hurt, and that's been the easiest way to measure safety. I don't think it's necessarily the right way to actually measure what companies are doing for performance improvement, but it's what we've been dealing with. So look at measuring risk, hazard identification, and your leadership participation and communication, which is a fun one to track if you get to tell all your executives how great they're doing. That's a picture of me and Paul down at his office. And you can see behind us, it's kind of blurry, but he wanted to take the picture in his beautiful office in front of that character of him falling off the Titanic. And he was so proud of that critique that was in a major magazine of him. It was written whenever he was kicked out of the Bush administration when he was the Secretary of the Treasury back in 2001 to 2002. Just an interesting little story about Paul. We talked about his time at the Treasury, and I'll tell you all over a real happy hour some of the more interesting things he said. But he did tell me when he got to the Treasury, no one knew what the injury rates were when he got there. They figured out what they were, and they reduced the injury rates in 11 months by 50% with his focus on safety. The big thing about Paul and leadership and performance improvement is that you have to embrace a learning culture. You can see a quote there from Franz Metcalf: people who admit mistakes are already on their way to making fewer of them in the future. So we know that people are our company's greatest resource, and we know that their unrealized potential is your company's greatest risk. So what do? You invest in them. It's workforce development, it's safety, it's doing what you say. And I would say that that corrective action program, when applied effectively, correctly, and absolutely supported by leadership, is the most effective tool in building that trust and credibility within your organization. Like I said, Paul gave out his home telephone number with his employees, and he said, call me. Well, one guy did. They had a conveyor down that was forcing employees in a plant in the South and it was actually in Tennessee, to essentially move extreme amounts of weight by hand, very risk-averse situation. And they called Paul O'Neill, the supervisor did, at 1 a.m. and said, your project, your facility manager, your director we've reported this issue, and here's what we're doing. We're moving all this heavy material by hand because the conveyor's down. Paul called that facility director, and 6 hours later, he got a call back saying it was fixed in the middle of the night. So it's doing what you say you're going to do. And Paul's ultimate objective was habitual excellence. That's a behavioral pattern that's going to lead to your desired business outcomes. His focus on safety naturally stimulated a big discussion, a broad discussion about processes in general, because you cannot tackle safety until you understand the inherent processes that make up the job. More importantly, the company had unlocked the potential of the workforce to work together on improving processes. So no matter the issue, the workforce knew how to work together to problem solve. This is one of the resources here that I think everyone should have access to. There's the Handbook of Human Performance Technology by James Pershing, your DOE standard, Human Performance Improvement Handbook, and then your INPO, the Nuclear Power Operators Human Performance Tools for Workers. And then I just wanted to share that Alcoa's market value increased to $27.53 billion in 2000 from $3 billion in 1986 before Paul started. Additionally, during his 13-year tenure at Alcoa, the number of lost workdays per employees fell to 0.2 from 1.86. So when you get safety right, everything else falls into place, including the finances. If you have any questions or concerns, or you want to catch up, my email's on there, and I'll turn it back over to the folks at CURT.
Jessica, thank you so much for such a comprehensive presentation. Lots of good stuff in there. For those of us who joined us midway through the presentation or perhaps through the afternoon, please be advised that all of these PowerPoint presentations, as well as information about the presenter, are available, will be available in the app, and also upon request from the CURT office, both to Rob and to Rana. We have just a few minutes for some questions that you may have. Rob or Rana, is there a question in the chat box that you'd like to pose to Jessica?
Hey, Greg, I've got one, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead, Chris. Yes, please.
All right. So, Jessica, overall, great presentation. I appreciate you taking the time to work with the safety committee, and just so everybody knows, Jessica did the bulk of the work for tomorrow's safety summit. So we've got a little bit of everything for everybody. But if there's one takeaway from your presentation that our membership could implement today, in your opinion, what would that be?
I would say a fully functioning, transparent corrective action program, wherein if you can engage that workforce in identifying problems and help you solve them. I think that would absolutely be the most fundamental tool you could use.
So that's something everybody can do today, and ultimately that builds that trust and respect that you were talking about.
Yeah, and one of the things that Paul O'Neill mentioned that I thought was interesting was, and this could be a whole nother presentation, Greg, but it's removing that cynicism from people about, motivational goals. And Paul really hated rank and structure because it really separated him from his people. So he said, to me, and he said, how do you explain dignity and respect if you go somewhere and the CEO, if I have my own private parking area? That gives people an internal monologue where they don't feel that they're being treated equally. So he was extreme in his views of dignity and respect.
All right.
Interesting. Any other questions? I don't see tons in the chat box. So if it's more convenient for you to activate your microphone and just ask the question of Jessica, we've got about 7 minutes. You can do that. Ed, it looks like your mic is activated. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so Jessica, thank you. It was very, very informative and detailed, but detailed in a good way. So detailed that I really paid attention. I wanted to go back to one of the slides, and you have to go back, but just maybe your thoughts. I work in a corporation. All the leadership is really watching dashboards for lagging indicators. Wanted to get your thoughts on focusing more on the leading indicators and what you think is important, and if you're seeing that trend in other corporations.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I would say that use the principle of self-interest with your leaders. The first leading indicator I would measure would be the leadership, communication, and participation. How many orientations did they attend? How many job site walk downs did they do? How many safety committees meetings did they walk into, right? So work with the leaders and incentivize their participation, and then let them start leading.
Jessica, this is Greg. What was the best way to incentivize that participation? What have you said? Well, let me rephrase the question. What are some of the incentive programs or the incentive initiatives that have been most effective?
Sure. When we talk about incentive programs as safety professionals, and a lot of you are going to nod your heads, the last 10 years we've been told to stay away from them from an injury reporting perspective. So essentially, if you can incentivize whatever you want, as long as it doesn't force people to not report injuries. So, if you want to incentivize, good catches or hazard prevention and identification, or participating in safety committees, the one thing we don't want to incentivize is those lagging indicators, because what happens is we're human and we love good peer pressure and bad peer pressure. So if we're on day 99 and I put a hammer on my thumb, I'm not going to report the injury and ruin our goal. I'm going to stick my hand in my pocket and make all my buddies happy. So really, it's just getting away from safety as injury reporting into safety as action that we do.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go
Hi,
right ahead, Kevin.
Hi, Jessica. Kevin O'Shawney. Great job, and thanks for all your leadership and the work that you've done in preparation for tomorrow's Safety Summit. So at Johnson & Johnson, we're a healthcare company, and we have an internal organization known as HPI, which focuses primarily on training people for how to exercise, how to eat properly, and just a better all-around work-life balance and a healthier life. So giving that knowledge for application of HPI in safety, is there specific training that you should set your teams up to get to think in this way?
You know, I think it would depend on the organization, but absolutely, there are different, you know, trainings you could put together based on the tools and based on the team, right? So if it's a work methods team, that might be different from your foreman or your leadership or, you know, what have you. But there are, so my best education resource for human performance improvement was my master's program at Boise State. That organizational performance and workplace learning masters, they also offer certificates for human performance improvement. So if you have people in your organization or you're driven to learn more about that, I'd look up Boise State. They've been doing it for a while and their classes are online. They've been online for a long time. They're instructional designers. They're good at it. So there are resources out there, but you don't have to pay high dollar consultants to tell you to look in the mirror, you know, so.
That's really good information right there. Jessica, is it possible that in the chat box or to Rana or Rob at our office that you could give us a link to some of the resources that you find most compelling in your work and in your journey, Boise State certificate program being one of those? If you could share, pardon me, with us some of maybe the top 3 resources that you monitor or that you recommend, that would be most helpful to us.
Absolutely.
And if you'll get those to Rana or Rob, you can just put them in the chat. Rana and Rob will pick them up, or you can call them or email them directly, whatever you would like. Are there other questions before we move on? Daniel, go right ahead.
I was going to make the point that, you know, we advocate a lot for training with respect to safety, like what, you know, has been talked about here. And of course, we ought to continue doing that, absolutely. But let me also make the pitch for why training with respect to workforce development and so on is so critical, not just when we're talking about improving productivity and all those types of things, but also as it relates to safety. You know, I remember a presentation this last February that Tony Bazzini at ExxonMobil did at the CURT National Conference. And one of the things he talked about is that gap between doing really well and 0. How do you close that gap? And then, you know, separating those into the types of incidents that could be categorized as a slip, trip, or fall. So something that happens because we're human, and it's difficult to totally eliminate that, perhaps. But training that could prevent things that can be prevented by training. So, for example, as he described it, being a grinder accident where you position the grinder or your body in a way that the sparks, you're in the line of fire of the sparks. That's an accident that could be preventable. And he was talking about how within the numbers of ExxonMobil, you know, there were, as I can't remember the exact percentages, but it was 50 to 60% or more of their accidents could have been prevented. That could have been prevented had they done more training on tools and those types of things. So I think the training component here is not just the safety training, but it's workforce related training as well. And that's where certainly in the workforce committee, we've been strongly advocating for that.
Great point, Daniel. Any other comments? Questions? Nasty remarks? Jessica, we are thick-skinned and tender-hearted at CURT. Okay. We want to thank you for all your fine work. Thank you so much for being a part of of us. And if you can get those top 3 resources that you follow, why that will help us a lot. And thank you in advance for that. Again, a little process check. Here's what the rest of the afternoon has in order. Momentarily, we're going to introduce the next set of speakers who are going to talk to us about project risk strategies moving forward. How do we get back to business? But before we do, keep in mind that at the end of this formal session, somewhere around 4:30, we're going to do a drawing, and somebody will receive a really nice little gift set for being a part of our online virtual CURT meeting all the way through. If you're just now joining us, or if you've joined sometime through the afternoon, in order to create a sense of place and a table for the discussion, if you will, or a sense of gathering, go ahead and activate your video. Keep your microphone muted until the appropriate time to ask questions, but go ahead and activate that video. And just seeing each other creates a sense of connectivity, and we certainly want to create that here at CURT. And then following the next presentation, after a few closing remarks, we're going to try a virtual happy hour. So I know it's 4:30, Harry Truman used to say, and Jimmy Buffett, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Well, it's going to be 4:30 on the East Coast, but if you want to grab an adult beverage and chill, the way that's going to work is we'll be in a plenary session like this for a few minutes, and then we're going to go into 3 10 or 12-minute breakout sessions with randomized people to get to know. The purpose is to connect with each other and to share information. Also on the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, we invite you to put your questions on the chat function at the bottom of this Zoom function, obviously, but you can also chat privately one with the other. So feel free to reach out in a private way, one to another. Let me introduce to you our next set of speakers, and we are spot on the schedule. I am so happy that we have today 2 amazing leaders in this space of project risk strategies. Jim Glorio is the president and CEO of Aon Construction Services out of St. Louis, and out of Texas, he has a colleague, Scott Nissen, who is with Aon Global Property Solutions. Their biodatas are in your app, I believe. Is that right, Greg Palmer? They've got the bios. I won't take time to read through all of them. Suffice it to say, if they're not in the app, they will be, as well as their contact information, so you can email them or call them should you so desire. So we're going to move right at this time to our special guests from St. Louis and from Houston, Jim Glorio, President and CEO of Aon, and Scott Nissen. Fellas, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you having us on today. I think it's great you guys are, having this session and the virtual happy hour, and, look forward to having a discussion today about, what's going on from a COVID standpoint, what we're seeing from the macro standpoint across Aon, and then Scott will go into kind of what we're seeing from a risk mitigation standpoint, as well as what we're seeing and hearing from insurance companies. So, so my bio is in here. As Greg mentioned, I'm the CEO of Aon's construction practice for the United States. Had the pleasure of speaking at the conference back in February, and doing one other session via Zoom with you folks. And then Scott is going to speak after me. He leads our builders risk practice here in the United States. Has a lot of experience on dealing with complex projects, large projects, has probably dealt with a few of you folks in his career, and is a graduate of UT Austin. So great guy, great resource for our team. So I think first starting, I think everybody knows, a little bit about Aon, but I think the interesting thing that this COVID crisis has done is it's helped being a global company. As a lot of you are, working for a global organization, we were able to see kind of what had happened in China, what was starting to happen in Europe, and then as it began in the United States, kind of having a perspective with literally, clients impacted from coast to coast. And now as we've kind of gone through, I think for us, we're in week 8 of working from home. Being able to see kind of as China's starting to reopen, as things are starting to happen in Europe, you know, how are those things being impacted? How can we anticipate maybe how things are going to play out in North America? And then the other part of it is that it's really impacted kind of all parts of our business. So whether it's the human capital piece of our business, the retirement consulting piece of our business, data and analytics has become really important as we've created models on what's going to happen, what we think outcomes might be for certain employee bases, et cetera. So I think it's given us an interesting perspective as we've dealt with this. Specific to construction, and I think all projects, regardless of whether, which state they're in, who the contractor is, who their owner is, have had some impact. And, the degree of impact, I would say that what we're seeing is that it's been much greater in the Northeast because of the infection rates, et cetera. With Pennsylvania, allowing no new projects to start for a while. And what we saw up in New York and Boston, still Boston being relatively shut down. So from a geographic standpoint, we really saw from kind of Virginia to the north, kind of Pennsylvania to the east, that northeast corridor has been really severely impacted with work and with projects being shut down. And then for the rest of the country, as projects have continued, and even in that part of the country where projects have continued, we kind of went through an evolution and kind of phase. And what we saw was the first, concern was, what is our ability to continue with a project or continue to work? And then if there was that ability to continue with the work, how do we keep our employees safe? How do we keep the job site safe? How do we keep the subcontractor employees safe? How do we change what we did from a work standpoint? Now is, over the last month or so, as more states have rolled out specific safety protocols that the projects have had to adjust to, how do we stay in compliance with local laws, local regulations? I guess there are more regulations than laws. And so, contractors and the owners, I think, have done a good job on kind of working through those issues and being able to keep a number of projects up and running. And then there was also a cultural aspect of it for many people, right? Because if the owners' employees were sent home and not working, in their offices, or the contractors' employees who worked back in the home office were sent home, from a cultural standpoint, how do we adjust to that and say, well, these people can be working, but these at a job site or around others, and these folks can't be working because they don't need to work in that environment. So saw a little bit of that at the beginning, and then I would say towards the end of March, kind of beginning of April, the bigger concern was how is this going to impact our business? How is COVID impacting our business? And what can we control? What can we control? How do we control the work environment? How do we think about cash flow? How do we think about the people that we've partnered with? And I think now we're in the next phase, which is, okay, how do I manage through this in the short term? And then also, what are the longer term implications for our particular business or our particular project? And so, I think one of the things that people look to from a longer term perspective is the Architecture Billings Index, or ABI. And so, for those of you who are familiar with this, anything above a 50 means that billings are kind of improving and continuing to kind of go out. Anything below a 50 shows a decrease in activity, and you can see in the last two recessions kind of what happened to the level of activity. And we saw a fall off back in 08, down to about 40 down from 50. Right here in 2020, what we've seen is that in January and February, the ABI was running at about 56. And then in March, it fell to 33. And in April, it's fallen all the way to 27. So, I think this is an indicator of what may be coming as it relates to less work in the future. And really, you know, the question that's arisen is, you know, what's the recovery going to look like? And, you know, I don't know how you guys feel. I know from, you know, reading the papers and watching the news, you know, I never knew that there was such an alphabet soup of potential recoveries here. You know, is it a U? Is it a V? Is it a W? Is it an L? And really what this, you know, all of these letters get to is that, you know, are we going to have a bounce back from a recovery standpoint? Are we going to have a bounce back and then a sudden decrease again? Or is it going to be a slower recovery? And I think, you know, different organizations are adjusting and trying to determine their future strategies based upon how they think that recovery is going to take place. One of the things that we have seen is that, you know, certain organizations, you know, whether it's contractors, owners, others, you know, are taking remedial efforts to either reduce salaries, furlough employees, lay off employees, and we've heard that 40% have considered layoffs and, you know, or have enacted layoffs. And, you know, from our conversations with contractors and what we're seeing is that for those who predominantly do work and for projects that are more in the Northeast, we've seen up to a 50+% impact. We've actually seen some folks who shut down all of their projects that they're working on. I think it comes down to geography as well as kind of profile on what type of work they're doing. And then for some of the contractors that are more in the Midwest or on the West Coast, we've seen as little as 10% of their jobs completely shut down. Again, kind of everything's impacted, but kind of a complete shutdown or a delay. I think the other thing that we've seen is new project starts kind of pushed off. And when it relates to kind of commercial development work, retail work, hospitality, you know, we saw a sudden drop off in March on that type of work. I think the interesting thing that's arisen in the last, you know, call it 6-8 weeks or 6 or so weeks is seeing that projects as it relates to healthcare systems have been pushed off. Projects as it relates to universities have been pushed off. And following some of what's happening around the universities and some of their financial challenges that they have going on, I think there's a real question as to whether some of that work will actually come back or not. I think folks are pretty confident that healthcare work will come back once we get past this kind of initial shock of the COVID situation. And the other thing is that, you know, as it relates to specifically to subcontractors, I think there's a concern kind of in the value chain. If you're an owner, you're concerned about the viability of the general contractors as well as maybe the viability of the subcontractors to be able to deal with this from a financial standpoint. I think if you're a general contractor, you're also taking a second look at the owners that you're working for as well as a concern for the subcontractors. On the first set of the PPP program that went through, I thought it was a great indicator that the construction companies were the leading beneficiary of that program. So that should help sustain part of the industry as we go through this. It'll be interesting to see, you know, after the second rounds of loans are approved, kind of what happens there. And so, you know, I think that, you know, right now that kind of concern about, you know, who are your partners and getting the work done and making sure that everybody's getting paid for the work that they're completing is an important thing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott to talk about what's happening from a risk management and an insurance marketplace standpoint. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Scott, you may want to activate your microphone. It's still showing silent.
Yeah, you're still muted. Bottom left corner. There you go.
Okay, technology is not my strength. I need a teenager here to help me out. We appreciate the invitation again, and what the comments we want to kind of give. We know there's a a very diverse group of the CURT membership, and the kind of the market implications that are a reality these days are really kind of, directed towards all the stakeholders, and that would be, owners who've got greenfield projects they're constructing, as well as, major CapEx, and then also for the contractors that are involved at all different levels, whether it's a general contractor or the subcontractors. But some of the changes we're seeing in the market right now is a lot of carriers are now, for builder's risk especially, are taking a very cautious approach and looking for a lot of information and a lot of time to be able to underwrite a risk, where before could almost be done somewhat on a cocktail napkin type of an approach. So when you have different types of projects, they're going to underwrite the financials of all the participants. They're going to be looking at the risk. If it's exposed to natural catastrophes, whether that's named windstorm, earthquakes, flooding, and so forth, all kind of come into the equation. We're seeing a lot of outside influences that are impacting pricing and capacity, and this ranges from the problems in the stock market and the bond market, because a lot of a carrier's incomes are coming from investment income and what they get for the money that they hold in trust and they invest, and those markets being in a negative territory, let alone if they're breaking even. And then the other areas that are impacting now that a lot of carriers are starting to make accruals for is what they feel might be an oncoming slot of litigation with respect to coverage that falls more into the business interruption part of it, which everybody has heard about in the news, but that impacts their overall portfolio. So when you take it back down to the construction world, they're having to live with that as well, even though there doesn't seem to be the same path to indemnity to be able to secure coverage for any kind of a slowdown or shutdown that you might have. And probably the other major area that we're seeing an impact on the market is the reinsurance carriers. Every insurance company, as we know, purchases reinsurance for their own account, whether on an individual project basis, which would be a facultative placement, or treaty, which is across their entire portfolio. And the reinsurance market are taking very conservative approaches. They're driving more risk to the retail carriers, and the retail carriers in turn are then passing that on to the ultimate buyer. So it is a process. There's a lot of factors that come into it to be able to deliver the best possible approach for the the project and how you work through it. The one thing we're going to have to, everybody in the market's going to have to encounter in the next several months is the need for extensions. Even if a project from a regulation standpoint has been allowed to proceed, we're starting to see a lot of impact that fall into the delay category that are going to require an extension of the policies. And this would not just be builder's risk, but this would include the casualty lines of insurance, to include professional liability, workers' comp, general liability, and excess. We're starting to see that sequencing of trades and subcontractors and materials and supplies are all impacting project schedules. And where you might think today, okay, I had a slowdown for 3 to 4 weeks, so therefore I can plug 3 to 4 weeks in at the end, it might be substantially longer because of the impacts of sequencing, and nobody can really identify and quantify at this point. The good news is the general response from the insurance market overall is that they are going to work with clients and treat them fairly. Generally speaking, when you're at the end of a project, when you look at builder's risk as an example, you've got nothing at risk at the time that you bind the insurance, and everything's at risk towards the end. So the message we're getting from most of the carriers is that they are going to be processing these extensions and so forth on a pro rata basis and not taking advantage. Probably the last point just in this world, and I think we're going to see it on all lines of insurance, whether it's operational or construction risk, is the carriers are going to be imposing new and updated, drafted by legal and so forth, exclusions that are going to address COVID-19 and specifically anything to do with infectious disease, pandemic, epidemic, which is going to reinforce the position that they've generally taken that there is, no coverage intended under the policy. So just, I know nobody likes to take restrictive language as they move forward with placing insurance and so forth, but it appears that the message we're getting from the marketplace across the entire spectrum is that they're going to have these exclusions that are going to clarify what their intent is and so forth. On the next slide, okay. Claims and so forth are going to be interesting. I think on the first party or the builder's risk, property, delay coverages and so forth, the general feeling is that there has to be direct physical damage to the insured asset in order to trigger a claim under builder's risk or delay coverage or related areas. Where initially it was interesting, there was not a lot of concern as far as frequency and severity falling into the workers' compensation or the liability category. It's now beginning to think that, this is going to be a much more active area for potential claims. If you look at areas such as let me back up. If you take workers' comp, generally the employee has a duty to demonstrate that the cause of their injury or sickness or so forth arose from the course of their employment. And typically with, infectious diseases and so forth, you could have been exposed anywhere, and it's difficult to say that it came specifically from work. However, now we're seeing all these employees in the gig economy, the meat packers, and all these other types of industries that are exposed to the general public, excuse me, and therefore have contracted COVID-19. The experts seem to think that there will be a much higher rate of workers' compensation claims where employers are not going to be able to have the defense that it was not employment related. And then the other area is going to be liability when people start coming back to work. Is it safe? Can I contract the infection or the virus, from my employment? Congress is talking about some kind of immunity bill. We'll wait and see how that works out. But I guess our message we're trying to convey across the board is the insurance world and the buyers and so forth, it's very fluid. There's not a lot of very specific, concrete answers as to where things are, where they're going to be, and what the challenges and opportunities could be in the future. So we recommend that everybody, stick close to their risk advisor, that they look at all options and all possibilities, and also other probable exposures that could come down the pike that we're not thinking about right now. So that's our little, comments on that. Jim, did you want to take the safety, or do you want me to run with that?
No, you can keep going.
Okay. With respect to safety and so forth, and it kind of goes with your prior speaker, she was much more eloquent and, truly kind of has a great grasp of her subject matter and so forth. But we are looking at the site specific exposures and so forth, which are going to play more into the risk profile of construction projects and so forth as we're moving forward. And I'm not going to read all these points, but these are the areas that the insurance carriers are focusing on, and where they feel that the risk is going to be presented, and they're actively looking at the policyholder to be taking a proactive approach in how they're addressing these various areas and so forth. One thing, not to put a commercial out there, but we have been very diligent in trying to provide some guidance, suggestions, and a number of white papers that we posted on our website. We've got one example of it here, and Aon does have a very robust COVID-19 information source that if you just go to aon.com, you can get all these documents and so forth. And we can also, if you'd like, Greg, provide them internally to Kurt to be able to distribute to the appropriate folks as well.
Yeah,
So
Scott, if you would, if you could send those either on the chat or to Rana and Rob at our office, we'll get those out to everybody.
There you go.
Okay.
We actually included them in the presentation.
And it's
Greg,
in the
and we'll get them out,
presentation.
we'll get them out to everybody. but there's a, there's a response site, as well as, we're hosting regular webinars, and then we've got a toolkit, which
I just now turned the page on the PowerPoints and saw that, Jim. Yeah, great. So these resources that Scott's mentioning are available in the PowerPoint presentation, which you all have in your app, and you can get upon request of this office. Go ahead, Scott. Great. You got great momentum and great information.
Okay.
Keep going.
Thank you. So, and I would just, welcome anyone that wants to continue going back to our website that might not be in here. We're updating this on a weekly basis, and there's new information coming out and new advisories for clients and so forth to be able to work through this process. The next area that we have is what's referred to as our construction risk portal. And this is something that and that will be on the next slide. There it is. That all members of CURT have access to. And it's a comprehensive source of information that falls into a number of areas, whether it would fall into legal issues from a jurisdictional standpoint to trying to determine if a project might have exposure to a natural catastrophe and other, information areas that would impact how a construction project is viewed by the insurance market, and also for internal risk management and contractual negotiations and so forth. And this is a living website. It's updated on a regular basis, and we're working with a number of leading law firms and other experts around the industry and so forth to populate this. And again, it's a living, site that we found a lot of our clients and our other risk partners really value the information. And while in some areas we might need to do some drill down into more specifics and so forth, and at least give everyone kind of a high level overview of where challenges might be for a construction project. And it's even helpful if you're just doing CapEx and so forth. So we welcome everyone to look at that and become familiar with it. And if there's any questions, you can reach out to there's a number of contact people that are included in the website where they can help you additionally.
As an added service, Aon is very generously, again, I want to emphasize the very bottom of this particular PowerPoint slide. It's free to you for a whole quarter, 90 days. And there's going to be some good things come of the construction risk portal and how it's used. What do you think the highest and best use, Jim and Scott, is of the portal? What would you say? Hey, here's the high impact value you'll get by accessing this portal and gleaning information from it. Scott or Jim, either one.
So I think Scott, you can build on this, but I think the first thing is the jurisdictional issues. So as everybody knows, a construction project in Illinois is much different than one in Missouri, just to use an example of kind of the metro area that I'm in. And so, the laws around workers' compensation, the general liability laws, the ability to access additional insured status under somebody else's insurance, anti-indemnity statutes, et cetera. So there's an overview of kind of each one of those issues that's regularly updated, as Scott said, and even issues such as Kotechi in Illinois as it relates to work comp lien waivers, et cetera. And then the other part of it is also from a CAT risk analyzer standpoint. So, is the project in an area where it may be subject to catastrophic events such as, windstorm, flood, earthquake. So knowing that when you're even deciding where you might, decide to build a project would be important. And then as you negotiate the terms and conditions of a contract, understanding those legal issues that fit in from a jurisdictional standpoint. It really the purpose of this is to make our clients better educated as they make decisions. So Scott, I don't know what you have to add.
Yeah, just to kind of, expand on that, there's various states have what they call definition of occurrence, and that becomes very important, once construction's complete and you're dealing with a potential construction defect that turns into a completed operations claim. Each state has a separate statute of repose, which is basically the discovery period post-construction when you can make a claim. I think the lowest one or the shortest one, I believe, might be Alabama, and it's 4 years or 5 years, and Florida's one that's got one of the longest ones. Probably the average is 10 years. So if you're building a project in a state or your contractor or so forth, you know, that statute of repose does impact how long your liability remains, you know, once you've completed construction, and from an owner, what period of time you have for recourse.
Jim and Scott, this is Daniel Groves. Great job providing perspective on why on how this can be of value, as Greg mentioned. Let me just say, from Kurt's perspective, you know, I looked at this portal, and you know, Kurt's reason for doing this is that we want to help our members as we come out of this period of time that we're in right now, as they move into looking for new opportunities and expanding and so on. We want that planning process to be as frictionless as it can possibly be. And so that's the reason Kurt is teaming up with Aon to offer this. And so it says on the screen, look for a separate message. We are planning to get that out to you around the middle of May. We have delayed on it a little bit because we're trying to get a sense of when you know, everything's going to be open for business again. We want that 90-day window to be available to you at the most optimal time. So that'll be coming out shortly. Look for information on that and use it to plan effectively.
Thanks, Daniel.
Hey, Greg, can you guys hear me? It's Angela.
Go right ahead, Angela.
So I wanted to add on to that Daniel and I have been working on this, and there will be a video demonstration that will come out from him with the additional messages. All you have to do is log into that site, watch the demo, and there'll be an address in there in his message where you click to get a login. So you have, you know, do the login, and they'll send you an invite back to your email. And that video demonstration is really well done, and it's about 25 minutes. And I think everybody will find this very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
you. Do we have that link now, Angela and Daniel?
Yes.
We are. Yes, it's available. We're sending it all out by email. I mean, we could do it right now. You know, if that's the preference. Our goal was to put it out about around May 15th.
Would it be, Angela, and I'll defer to you and Scott and Jim on this. Is there a problem that we put the link out now in the chat box for those who are on this call so they can capture it in real time? Would there be any kind of...
Fine with me.
Not from my perspective.
Yeah, that works for us.
That's good. Yeah.
Daniel, do you have that already? Sorry, gang, we're doing a little process check here. Do you have it, or can you and Angela work together to at least put it out on the chat box here momentarily?
Yep. We'll do it.
So Angela, tell us one more time what Daniel's getting ready to put on the chat box for everybody on the call. Explain one more time what it is they're getting.
So what they're getting is a video demonstration that you go in and you click on the address. It will take you to a 25-minute demo of the Construction Risk Portal, and it will walk you through how to use it and what it entails. And then after you do that, we'll have a link set out to an address that you can go and push that button, and that address will take you to an Aon portal that you sign up, you give them your information, and they will send you back a logon.
Great. And if you can put a little instruction on that, Daniel, or even afterwards, let's at least do that as an upgrade for those who are on the call still. Jim and Scott, any final thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry, Dee, go ahead. Go ahead, Daniel, I'm sorry. Daniel, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, I may have run over you there.
Sorry, I was just saying I just got it all out. It'll be available in the chat box here in a minute or less.
Great, thank you. Scott or Jim, any comments, final comments? Then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, the one thing that I'd like to build on is what Scott talked about as it relates to work comp, in addition to the, you know, how quickly kind of this situation's changing for everyone. So, you know, a few weeks ago, you know, a couple of states first came out and said that, you know, there would be a presumption that emergency workers are covered that their work comp claims are covered by workers' compensation. So, EMTs, firefighters, policemen, people who worked in hospitals, etc. And when that first happened, kind of maybe the first week or so in April, there was a concern that that could be expanded further. And I think it was on April 13th, the Illinois Industrial Commission came out and put a very, very broad definition of what they determined to be essential workers out there that would have a presumption that if they contracted COVID-19, it would be covered by workers' compensation. There was a question of whether or not the Illinois Industrial Commission had the legal authority to just make that proclamation. There's actually a lawsuit that's been filed that's actually been stopped for right now. There's a restraining order as it relates to that going into effect. But as Scott said, I anticipate we're going to see kind of more and more of these changes. And again, it goes a little bit to the construction risk portal on, every state's a little bit different in how they're going to handle these situations as it relates to work comp, and liability issues are a little bit different. We'll see if the US Congress does anything from the liability standpoint, but it's something that we're monitoring and staying on top of very closely to see how this is going to impact the insurance community, as well as many of our clients. Many of the CURT members probably have high retention programs or retention programs as well, where they share in the losses. So this can have a financial impact on everybody.
Scott, any final remarks?
No, I think Jim kind of summarized it again. We appreciate the invitation and glad to share our experiences, and we will continue to share things as they develop for the overall membership.
Great. We're going to go to Rana and Rob. They've been monitoring the chat box so that I don't have to, and I can monitor what's going on here. Rob, Rana, any questions that we want to raise for Jim and for Scott? Rob, go right ahead.
Rana, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say is that we have a question from Greg Davis asking, how would COVID-19 cause a loss to the constructed product that is ever be a valid builder's risk claim?
I think our response to that was it's probably a stretch. Virtually all policies of a builder's risk nature have a coverage trigger that requires direct physical damage, and in black and white sense, it's awful hard to see that just the existence of a virus or so forth that precluded work would be damage. But I'm not going to put anything past our creative plaintiffs bar and the law firms that and the courts that might interpret this. But as it stands right now, generally, all the experts kind of put forth that in the absence of damage, it's going to be a very difficult path to perfect any sort of a claim.
Greg, is there any follow-up question you have of that? Feel free to activate your mic and generate a discussion. We're good.
No, that was exactly what I would have imagined. I was just curious, just because it was on the slide, like, am I missing something in some types of builder's risk policies that could imply something other than a direct damage that builder's risk would cover? But I think that answered it well. Thank you.
One of the challenges with builder's risk is it's not a controlled class of business, if you will, where the state boards of insurance, bless every policy that goes out. And we're like, if you take workers' compensation, it is a filed form, automobile, things like that. That's why we have a little bit of wiggle room in there, because there are some carriers that might have issued a policy somewhere along the way where the wording is not as tight as it might be with other markets, and therefore there might be a path to perfecting a claim. But I would say for all the major carriers that most everyone would deal with, the policy wording is pretty concise that you have to have the direct physical damage.
Thanks. Rob, is there another question in the queue?
So is the model of health insurance going to apply to the construction insurance? Health insurance has been mandated to continue policies in service. However, they predict the cost is pay me later.
Generally, we would say probably no. It's, especially on a commercial, type policy, it's it's a consideration contract where, you pay the premium and the carrier provides the coverage. And if there's cancellation provisions and other outs for either one of the party, they can probably be, exercised. But at this point in time, we don't know of any regulatory or judicial override that would require coverage remain in place.
Yeah, there's two areas where we have seen the regulators step in. One would be around premium forbearance, so giving people the ability to wait to pay their premiums, either 45, 60 days. The second thing would be return premium, but that generally is applying to more of personal lines auto and other things. California has been a little bit more aggressive than some of the other states. Again, if you go to our website, there's a state-by-state analysis on what's happening, and we're keeping that all on the website because it's literally changing, maybe not daily, but weekly as it relates to the states. The other thing is that some of the insurance companies have come out and voluntarily said, if you contact them, they'll work with you on premium if you're on premium payments, if their clients are facing a tough situation. But have not seen any new regulations around rate increases or the inability to change rates because of COVID-19.
Great, thanks, Jim. Other questions? And if you have a question at this point, just activate your mic and ask. All systems go, huh? All minds clear. Great. I may have asked you this, Jim, the other day when you were on, and that is what sources are you folks monitoring for the latest developments on this insurance or risk issue? What are you looking at outside of Aon's organization? Who are you tracking? What are you tracking?
So, I think, we're tracking from a, kind of what is happening standpoint. We're looking at the Johns Hopkins website. That was actually, in the first draft of the slides, one of the slides we had we put that aside because I think everybody's so familiar with that website right now. Also the World Health Organization, the CDC. I think it's going to be interesting as states begin to open up, what happens. There's a lot of talking heads on the television, giving opinions one way or another on kind of what's going to happen and changing models, et cetera. I think we're going to have to see kind of how all that plays out. I mentioned the ABI. We're taking a look at that. And then we're looking internally a lot around, how many project starts are we seeing versus traditional, how many bonds are we issuing, et cetera, as it relates to new contract starts. So, kind of anywhere and everywhere we can pull more information, I think it's good at this point in time because we're all in kind of uncharted territory. The other thing that we're doing is we're spending a lot of time talking to our clients, talking to the insurance companies, and the insurance market is changing so quickly. It's relatively traditional for us in normal market conditions to provide our team with quarterly updates on what's happening around underwriter appetite, what's happening as it relates to different terms and conditions. And 2 weeks ago, we switched that to a weekly update. So we're providing all of our brokers and account executives with the weekly update around how things are changing in the insurance market, specifically as it relates to COVID-19. So, a lot of eyes and ears out on the field as well.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Jim, Scott, thank you all so much. We appreciate it. For those who remain on the call, a couple of wrap up. Number one, we are about 15 minutes early. That's good, always. And which means we'll start our virtual reception. And Tony and Jim, you're welcome, or Scott and Jim, you're welcome to join us here in just a few minutes.